2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for December 19th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Stephen, do you have any announcements?
Yes, bear with me. Well, first announcement, I'll be on the road tomorrow. I'm visiting the Essex Regional Dispatch Center, but I'll be available by cell phone if needed. So one of the things that we had, obviously, last week, we had a little, we had delay with our trash collection for the week. That was a call that was made Sunday by Waste Management based on their reading of the forecast for the week. They didn't want to send their trucks and employees out in hazardous weather. And they represent a territory that includes many more towns than us. So they, and as you know, the accumulation forecasts for that event on Monday that really turned into a non-event were varied. In hindsight, it was a mistake to call it off because they ended up collecting all day Saturday in much more difficult weather conditions than were realized on Monday. So we talked to Waste Management today about getting feedback from us before they make that kind of call, and they were open to that and just making sure that they communicated very well with us, but they just didn't make the right decision, and they don't have the ability to catch up. So if they delay Monday, do all of Monday and Tuesday on Tuesday, they do many communities, so they don't have the depth to do that kind of catch up. So that's why we have to be careful with how we do it. But the whole process did illustrate why it is so important for people to register for our Civic Ready system, especially for emails and text messages, because we were initially averse to sending out an emergency call, even though it affected all households. But when we went to go do the announcement via email and text message, only about 540 household numbers combined have signed up for the DPW alerts and the trash collection alerts. I mean, you can pick what you want to get announcements on, and there's a trash delay specific announcement, or you can sign up for all of them if you want to get texts and emails. So finally, by Wednesday, we realized the word wasn't getting out broadly enough, so we did the phone call. But it really highlighted that people really need to go on the website and look for the messaging alert system and sign up, so when things like this happen, they can get better information. And there will be most town departments will be open through the day on Friday. At Town Hall and the Community House do close at noon, but they do every Friday. Library is closed, I believe, the 24th and the 26th. But other than that, I would check the website or call first, but we expect most places to be open for normal business hours that don't close normally early on a Friday.
Any other announcements from other Select Board members? No. Okay, and we're at 7:05, so we're going to go right into the liquor license change, Long Meadow Country Club.
Thank you. Representing the club, I'm Jeffrey Roberts, and this is Joanne Ciarla. Joanne is the manager, new manager, and I understand that when the filing was made with the town to go to ABCC, the board of directors had changed, so when the ABCC looked at the application, it didn't match what they had with the Secretary of State, and that board changes a lot. There's rotating members. So they just weren't in the right cycle. So that, I guess we've been asked to come in and explain that we now have it correct. It's all been filed with the Secretary of State, and now we'd like it to go back to the ABCC.
Stephen, do we need to open a formal hearing then and close it like we usually do because we're changing the paperwork? Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to open the liquor license hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, and anything
start.
else you want to tell us?
No, we'd just like it to go through so we can continue the holiday season
Any
in a
questions?
lawful manner.
Every time you change board members, you have to redo this?
No, but there was a manager change.
Oh.
We changed the manager. So that's why we did it. And then when they did, the board was out of sync.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, is there a motion to accept?
I move we approve the transfer of management to Joanne Claria for the Long Meadow Country Club.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And our next item is Columbia Gas. Were they going to come here tonight, Stephen?
They're supposed to.
Are we moving too quickly? Okay. I guess you're here.
Well, Andrea Lupe's here from
Oh, you
Columbia
are
Gas.
here.
She's waiting for another individual, and she asked if she could be pushed back in the agenda, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure,
Okay.
we'll move her back.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so we'll go on to resident comments. Any resident comments? Oh, okay. I got it. Thanks.
Hello, it's me again.
You have to say your name and address again.
I'm sorry?
You have to give us your name and address
Yeah,
for
my
the
name
notes.
is Fran Miffett. I live at 81 Nevins Avenue. And last time I spoke to the group, I spoke from my heart about isolation and having my family living distant from me and having lost a lot of relatives to death and feeling sometimes very isolated. And so I spoke to you from my heart. And then I started thinking about what you really need to hear, what we all really need to know. And I am an RN, and I'm still plugged in, even though I'm retired. I'm still plugged into medical issues, medical things. And in the things that I've just received this week alone, Healthy Aging from Mount Sinai School of Medicine, Mass General, Mind, Mood, and Memory, and PBS has done a whole PBS NewsHour did a whole article regarding loneliness and isolation. They have found, the University of San Francisco had a study that said that isolation for an elder is the equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day to damage their health. It is totally something that will take 58% of them and send them into a decline, and 45% of those die earlier. It is something that can be avoided. It is something that you may find somebody who walks around the grocery store very frequently, looking at cat food, maybe buying some ice cream, going up and down the aisles, seems to do that every day. And if you stopped and asked him, he would probably say it's because it's bright. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of noise. I'm not alone. And that is something that I think that we need to really start thinking about when we start thinking about the elders in this community. A lot of people, I think, have the idea that there's not a lot of isolated people. And we know from some of the work that Michael has done in his social work that he has found more and more fragile people here in the town than we ever knew existed. And that's going to increase. As somebody loses a spouse, your friends die, and all the sort of things that happen in normal life, but that can create a thunderous effect. If you're not feeling well, do you know that there's anybody that can come and bring you some chicken soup? Do you know that there's anybody who even realizes you're not feeling well? Who can run down to CVS for you and get you some cough medicine when you're feeling lousy? Take you to the doctor? Just come in and make sure you're doing okay. Yeah, we have wellness checks from the police, but somebody has to notify them that somebody needs a wellness check. That's when some of the programs from the senior center come in when you talk about Meals on Wheels. In fact, Amy was telling us that there were some people that don't normally volunteer for Meals on Wheels. And it usually is something that takes a couple of hours. And it took them 5 or 6 hours, if I'm not mistaken, because they so enjoyed speaking to the elderly people. It took them forever to get back to the center. And they were so surprised at how good it was. The elderly people enjoy it. But it's not, they enjoy the conversation. But it's not just simply from the heart. I wanted to tell you that there's a tremendous amount of scientific information out there. And today I just received another request from the Harvard Nurses Health Study. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. Back when Florence Nightingale and I graduated from nursing school, a few years later, they contacted us through the Registry of Nursing and asked if we would volunteer to do yearly health paperwork. And also, I've sent them toenails, I've sent them hair, I've sent them DNA over the course of the years, and then they take that information and do a lot of research on it, and they have found various things that work and don't work, and various things that you should do. Well, long ago, they were asking you how many times a week you eat broccoli. Now they're asking you how many times a week do you talk to somebody else. They used to ask me how many times a week, how many miles I drove to work every day. Now they're asking me, do I have transportation? And they're going to the other end, and in this particular one is actually a depression screen. So it's a group of nurses throughout Massachusetts that have been studied for over 40 years. And they're beginning to find isolation is a huge, huge problem. So from the heart, though, let me go back to this one. The next time you're standing in a grocery line and you're impatient and the lady in front of you, the elderly woman in front of you, is speaking at length about her latest doctor's visit to the clerk, please don't be impatient. That may be the only conversation she's had for an entire 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Richard Elias, 608 Frank Smith Road. In school, my favorite classes, we used to call it trucks and buses. That's how you take things that are needed and things and kind of put them together and make them work good for the town. I found out here that if it's going to cost the town something, don't even bring it up, even though it might be a good idea. But sometimes you can find ways to bundle things in. We have a great service in town where we take passport applications for our residents. And I understand there are people that come from down in Connecticut because it's not easy for that. We make money on that. I talked to Barry, and she was saying that if we did take the pictures to go along with that, it would probably be a moneymaker for the town. It would definitely pay for itself, any investment, whether we do it with a camera or on the computer program. So there we've got the basis for that. Now, I was thinking maybe all town employees, you were wanting to recognize them in some way. If we had an identification card with a picture on for town employees saying on the bottom, serving Long Meadow since such and such a date, that would be nice for them to have. Not that we really need them to have it. There are a lot of towns in the area where people have been going in and saying they were from this department or that department. Well, it's kind of hard to get a big orange truck to go up in front of somebody if you're not from the town. So it's a possibility that we'd have people, especially in the spring when the people come from all over the country trying to scam the people here. So it's not a bad idea to have it. And if we incorporated that with the camera that we're going to have for the passport photos, it really wouldn't cost the town anything to have that. I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
Body's falling apart, but the mouth works good.
Eleanor Stoller, Meadow Road. I believe the last time you had a meeting and we were here, it was mentioned there's a lot of Connecticut cars at the senior center. Well, I'd just like you to know a lot of those Connecticut cars are friends of mine, and their kids went to school with Mayan, our only child, and they stayed in Long Meadow as long as they could, but with the maintenance of their house, once they're alone, they moved to Connecticut just so they could continue to come to the senior center. And if it weren't there for them, and I'm happy to see them because I've known them since our kids were little, and now all those kids are in their 50s. I hate to say it, but anyway, they are. And, without that, where would they go? It's strange, even the senior center in Enfield is of strangers there. And they can socialize with people because they've known them for years and years. And I think that's a good point. So, that's the reason for a lot of those cars that come there. And the other thing I noticed on your agenda, you have a lot of things you're going to pick or something with the zoning for whatever, the new senior center. Please, let's move with that, please, senior center. I mean, I'd like to see it. I really would. We've worked hard. I mean, Mary Beth has been fantastic. The whole group has worked so hard. And if you just let us get an architect to get a picture of it, it might be a little better, and maybe we'd feel better too. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
You haven't seen me in a while. My name is Mary Beth Bergeron. I live at 497 Inverness Lane. Tonight's a really rare event, I believe, for the Select Board. You will be addressing 4 items that will directly address the needs of our senior citizens in Long Meadow. I must admit that together with all of the senior residents, I am grateful and appreciative that we have caught your attention. Let me assure you, we are not going away. I know many people thought after the October vote that the drive for the new senior center would sort of fade away. As you know, it hasn't. And although the vote did not go the way we had hoped, that does not take away from the fact that we need a new, improved facility for the senior residents of our town, both for the residents today as well as the residents of tomorrow. Over the course of the last year, we have talked about a number of different issues. The 45,000 visits to the Greenwood Center a year, both children and adults. We've talked about the lack of programming for the younger seniors in our community, the inability to offer that program because of lack of space, the inadequate, we've talked about our parks, our field space, and the infrastructure needs within our community. Tonight, I want to speak to the board members and to the public about the social justice needs in our community and how we do address them as a community, and as importantly, who pays for them and how much do we pay. Most of the statistics I'm going to quote to you tonight come from the Pioneer Valley Planning Report, which depended on the 2010 census, 6 years ago. These figures have changed, but certainly not for the better when it comes to the seniors of our town. In 2010, approximately 5% of our entire population, both seniors and younger people, fell within the federal poverty line, 800 of our residents. That is a significant number. We are not all affluent in the town of Long Meadow. Today, we have 4,400 senior citizens. There are 7,018 residents of our town that are over the age of 50. So we have 3,000 rising seniors that are going to be coming into that demographic very shortly. As you probably are aware, there is a trend today of aging in place, and that's part of the reason why we need a new senior center, not only to address the isolation needs, but also this other social needs in our community. The social justice issues of our community are handled primarily and almost exclusively by the Council on Aging. through the direction of the town manager and yourselves, the select board. The senior center handles numerous programs. I've given you a list of them, but for the benefit of the public, I'd like to read out some of them. The senior center implements the federal Meals on Wheels program, the Greater Springfield Senior Services Luncheon Daily program, the Long Meadow Open Pantry, where people who are in need can come and get groceries, Veterans Assistance and Referrals, the Home Loan Modification Program. They administer the wellness clinics, flu shots, foot care, etc. They administer the health benefits programs. They handle information. They are an information and referral service for services for caregivers, meal preparation, etc. They do a home visit program through the new outreach coordinator. Thank you very much for hiring that gentleman. He has done an absolutely outstanding job in reaching some of our seniors that are in isolation. The Council on Aging administers the fuel assistance program, grocery delivery through the Big Y, the SHINE program, the health insurance counselors, medical equipment loan closet, assistance with arranging respite care for caregivers, housing for elderly referrals, tax preparation assistance through the AARP, scam and spam educational programming, aging discussion groups, adult protective services. That's where elders may come in or family may come in where they're concerned where an elder may be suffering from some sort of abuse. They also run the town volunteer program, linking volunteers with the needs within our community. They work with seniors and the Senior Veterans Work-Off Abatement Program. All of these 23 social service programs that I just mentioned are administered by the director and by the outreach coordinator at the staff at that facility. They do an outstanding job. The town manager does an outstanding job in linking people with the senior center for those social services that are needed. There is a shortcoming, however, and that is as it relates to the HIPAA regulations and privacy. If a person needs to apply for fuel assistance, for example, there is no private room for either the director or the outreach coordinator to meet with them. If there's a person coming in to receive food from the food pantry, there is no privacy. If a person is coming into the center because they are concerned that there might be elder abuse happening, there is no privacy. As a result, people who might apply don't come in because they don't want other people to know their personal business. All of these programs and the senior center itself, what is it costing our individual taxpayers? We have a budget of $151,000. I will admit that does not include the cost of the building itself, heat, the janitorial services, etc. I have no way of quantifying that, but our direct budget is $151,000. It costs each taxpayer $3.78 a year for the Council on Aging to run. That is a disparity with what the amount of money that our seniors are paying in taxes for this town. I think we deserve better. So when you are going through the 4 different articles this evening on your agenda, I would like you to remember that you serve an important purpose in terms of administrating the social justice needs within our community. It costs our taxpayers very little money. We are in need of a new facility, and we want you to move forward on it. In conclusion, I would like to wish you all a happy holiday. Thank you.
I believe that she also handed out this.
Yes.
As you could put this in correspondence, so it could be part of the general packet for any residents who want to, anything we receive. Any other resident comments? No? Okay, well, I'm sorry, did you say yes? Come on.
I'm John McDonough. I'm a resident at St. Mary's on 519 Long Meadow Street. First of all, thank you for your service to the community. Appreciate it. Top of everything else you do, appreciate that. I know at St. Mary's, and I know from some of our Jewish neighbors, there's a lot of excitement these days about children coming home from town for the holidays. And this is a lot of enthusiasm among our senior citizens for the visits of these children. from out of state, sometimes quite some distance away. And it just brings to mind, to me, how isolated they can feel, and how excited they are to see their children and their grandchildren. And unfortunately, we live in a world where, for job opportunities, too many of our young people need to move out of our area. And I'm very conscious of, both in the Jewish community but also our Catholic community, is that isolation that too many of them feel. And so I'm a little concerned that many of them have given a lot to the community, it seems, it appears to me, and the greater Springfield area. And so I think some way we could salute them, support them in ways that would be effective. I think there's many intelligent people and many compassionate people here in Long Meadow that can figure a way to move forward in a way that supports them and really treasures their wisdom among us. So,
Thank you. Any other resident comments? Okay, we'll move back to Columbia Gas.
Rita, you going to go back to select board comments at some point?
Yes, yeah. Stephen, do you want to tell us a little bit on why we've invited Columbia Gas?
Sure. As everyone here knows, or as the board knows, our major reconstruction of Converse Street, which is a project being managed by Massachusetts Department of Transportation, so we're not managing it locally, the state's managing it, which was funded through the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, is set to begin early next year. Columbia Gas had started some work on replacing some of the gas main along Converse Street, but more work needs to be done. Not only additional installation of main, but also service connections to houses. And we're concerned that that work is going to interfere with or conflict with the calendar of the Converse Street project. And so they have asked to work through our winter moratorium, which we did last year. Because usually it's a week by week decision depending on the weather, but we typically don't like to do that because we don't like any trenching in the wintertime because it's hard to get the asphalt to set back, and then plowing and traffic and everything else becomes disrupted. Nevertheless, the show must go on, and the work does need to be done, and Columbia Gas does enjoy certain rights as a utility to do work in our streets, and at the end of the day, it's the customers, the residents of Long Meadow, that are going to be the ultimate beneficiaries of the work, just like they'll be the ultimate beneficiaries of the work on Converse Street. But we just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that this is something DPW Director Mazza and I have been discussing, and just have Columbia Gas here to answer any questions about the work they're going to be doing and the reason for needing to do it here in the wintertime, and how long we think it's going to take, and what resources they're bringing to bear to make sure it is as to mitigate the impact on the community to the greatest extent possible. So that's why we have them here.
Thank you. Any questions the select board has?
Yeah,
Mr. Gold?
I have a bunch of questions. Primarily, I'll start with Mr. Crane's last comment. What are you going to do to mitigate the impact on the community? And I'll give you specifics. We're going to end up with a road that those of people who live in Long Meadow remember Maple Road about five winters ago, and it was a mess. Lots of damage to cars driving over unpaved road. This predates Stephen and Mario, but it was the worst situation in the world to have a major street that wasn't paved during the wintertime. One snowstorm, one plow incident. And so the question is, what are you going to do? We get complaints from residents because the truck's going down the road, shake as it is, and shake their houses. So what are we going to do to mitigate the impact?
Okay, first of all, my name is Ryan Barnes. I'm an engineer with Columbia Gas of Massachusetts. I was responsible for designing this project. Thank you for having us tonight. And I just wanted to say that, so what we have existing on this project, so we broke it into two phases. Our Converse Street Phase 1, which you saw us working this year, and Phase 2, which is going to take place, needs to take place still. And in Phase 1, all we have left is service connections. So we are in the northern tree belt on Converse Street. So for all the northern residences, we won't have to cross the road. But for houses on the southern side of the road, we will have to cross. And to answer that question on restoration, how are we going to handle this? First thing we're going to look at, if possible, we're going to try to utilize trenchless technology where we can. Again, in the winter, that may be tough because of frost levels, and it all depends on utility crossings, soil settlement. So we're going to utilize it where we can, and that will be basically, it's almost like a trenchless bullet, if you think so. And that'll be shot underneath the ground with potholes that have to be made in the road wherever you cross utility to make sure you're not encountering any crossbores where we break another utility with that. So that will be one option we will try to use. If not, if the trenchless technology of the bullet is not accessible, we will have to open cut and trench across that road, and we will be using winter mix. We will not leave any section unpaved, and we will not leave plates in the road overnight. These will be trenches that will be paved by the end of the day when they leave, and usually it will be up to the discussion with the DPW, but most of the time when we restore in the winter, that's a temporary patch, and we go back in the spring and put our final restoration in place. So again, that would be a conversation we would have with the DPW. But I just want you to know that there will be no unrestored section of that road as we work across it. And the only places we will be crossing that road are for the service connections on the other side. So lateral connections. We're in the tree belt for all of our main installation going down the road.
And what's the distance on the bullet? Is it 20 yards?
We can shoot it pretty much comfortably across the length of Converse Street. There's no set limit that we see. We have a tool that we can use to kind of like track it as it goes across. So there's no real set limit. We use it short side if we don't want to disturb people's yards, or if there's say their sprinkler system isn't in the way, we like to use it. Because it's very dependent on the location and what utilities are in the ground.
Right.
So that's why I say we can use it, but I don't want to make any promises on using it every single time, because it is a case-by-case basis on how much we can use it.
So this first phase is really just connecting houses to the gas line?
Correct.
Okay.
All the main installation is done, as you can see, from Dickinson to Normandy. And all that main installation is done, and all that would be left would be service connections on that section.
How many connections are there?
There are approximately 35 connections, I want to say, and that's for rerunning total services. And on services where we have existing plastic services, all we do is tie those over to the new main. So that's a lot less intrusive. You're making smaller trenches because we're just connecting from where our old main is to where our new main is, which is about approximately 10 feet apart right now.
This afternoon, I did forward a letter from Columbia Gas that outlined the details of the work to the board.
Okay.
So you have that in your inboxes.
Any other questions?
So are you actually making 36 crossover?
Go ahead.
So that 36 is for short side and long side services. I would gander to say they're about 50-50. So out of those, I'd estimate about 18 of those would be going across the road. And I can come up with a solid number and report that to Mario as well.
So, and this is more internally, I guess, Mario, do we have the right to critique the job in terms of, that temporary patch isn't sufficient?
Of course.
Because, again, we're going to have, Converse Street has major traffic through the East Long Meadow Industrial Park, and it's the 18-wheelers that are going thump, thump, thump 18 times going down the road. In fact, it's 6 times every truck as they each set of wheels goes over it. So it's probably 100 times down the road that they're going to get thump, thump, thump. And the question is, I can see the road going like this and the trench goes like that. And how are we going to get that filled in? And why are we going to, you said you were going to use cold patch technology? Winter mix technology. Why don't we just use concrete, quick set, something like set 60 or something like that's made to do that will be flat, that won't, that as opposed, I know it's more expensive, but it's the right thing to do. Why wouldn't we do something like that? Is it expenses?
I can just say with the standards and you going with the Mass DOT standards we have, usually the winter mix is what we utilize based on the location. Of course, in discussions with the DPW or other arrangements can be met, but most of the times we stick to the Mass DOT standards for restoration of roads. And
So just to expand on that a little bit, they actually made a crossing, I think it was at Normandy on Converse, when they did the first phase. And the exact scenario you just described played out. We reached out to them, they came out and fixed it. Of course, summer mix was available then, so that wasn't that big of an issue. Winter mix, on the other hand, will do pretty much what you described. They'll fill it, and it'll probably be there for a couple weeks
No,
or
be
one
there till the
storm.
first plow comes by.
Right.
Right.
And then they're gonna have to be on the hook, and that's kind of why I wanted them here, so you can hear that. So when we call them, they have to go back out and fix it until the project starts in March.
But what's the accountability, Mario? I mean, and I've got no experience with Columbia Gas, but there, we can call them and they can say, "Gee, we got more important things to do. We've got emergencies. We've got whatever it is. We'll get there when we get there." And now all of a sudden it's 4-6 weeks later, and we still got 18 wheelers going thump thump thump. I mean, how do we make that more accountable? How do we
Yeah,
make Columbia Gas more accountable to come out and fix it?
Other than their word, I don't have a way to make that happen.
Well, and Ryan, I don't mean to pick on you. I appreciate you being here. You're very articulate. You do the right job, but you're not the guys we want to speak to. We want to speak to her or somebody above her who will make this commitment on behalf of Columbia Gas. And unless you can make the commitment that we will respond within 48 hours of a call or whatever that commitment needs to be, because I'm not prepared to give you folks a pass. Come on up. Love to have you.
One of the things, while Andrea's coming up, I do want to kind of throw out for her and for the board's consideration. One of the things that I'm still confused on, I mean, Ryan, you can help me with this. When you were out there earlier this year doing the main work, I know the letter indicated that we didn't make the crossings because we didn't want to get stuck, run into the winter. And now here we are in the dead of winter, going back out to do the work. So I guess my question would be, why didn't you complete the crossings when you were already out there in the field doing the main work?
And that's a good question, and that is, we do not do any of the services until all the main is gassed and ready to be basically tapped to run each service connection. So that's basic order of what we do. So we were able to get all of our main installed and gassed, and that was at the point where we started, dwindling contractor resources, and we weren't able to commit to be able to finish all of those services along that job. And with the season approaching, we weren't able to feel comfortable in finishing every single house on that job, which would allow us to basically put the button on the project. And that's why we are coming to you now with the prospect of winter work to actually get done with that first phase of the project and move forward with the second phase.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Go ahead, right ahead.
So I heard a phrase, diminished contractor resources. Does that mean ran out of money for the project? I mean, is that what that translates into? Because I'm going to be wondering, it's a few months now, do you now have the contractor resources to do the job? I mean, what resources weren't available then that are available now?
You want to take this?
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Andrea Luby. I'm the Manager of Communications and Community Relations. So as Ryan said, thank you for having us here tonight. Typically, this time of year, we lay contractors off because we do respect the moratoriums of the municipalities that we work in. But for the past couple of years, we've been very successful in getting municipalities to allow us to do winter work so that we can get through a lot of these types of projects, our compliance work. Before we laid contractors off, we wanted to seek out this approval. Can we do this work? Because, as you all know, we don't want to lay anybody off. And I think when we talked about diminished resources, we were about to let them go. If we get permission tonight to work this project, they're going to stay on and work the project. And then, as you said, Mr. Crane, you have the phase of the project. So what will come next, and Ryan can explain that as well, is phase 2, the other end of this project. And Mr. Gold, I can make a decision to make a commitment to you that if you have a problem, we will respond in less than 48 hours. I mean, that's our word, that's our reputation. We live by that, we live by our commitments. So I'm here to say we will do our best to make sure that this temporary patchwork that needs to take place during this project is done to your satisfaction.
Thank you very much, appreciate it, because I'll just feedback, but we as a town, I particularly personally, we had a terrible experience on Meriwether Drive with Columbia Gas. And so the last major project done in this town, there were issues, and that's one of the reasons I'm being a little tougher than I might normally, just, sure, go ahead, let's do it. We had a very, very bad experience in Columbia Gas where they, I don't know, Stephen, 3 times, 4 times, they had to go door to door and restart everybody's gas appliances in the neighborhood. I mean, it was just a mess. And you know.
Is
so
that because of a restoration project?
It was a drainage project we were doing that dug up the road, and it was a mess. Let's just leave it that way. But
Any other questions?
well, that's just phase 1, Marie. I mean, that's the tie-ins. There's phase 2, which is literally Converse Street, Normandy to Laurel, and that was also going to start. And I didn't get a sense from that that's also in the tree belt from what I read. Is that totally going to be construction in the tree belt, that main?
Yes, that will be in the northern tree belt as well. So again, it would kind of just be the disturbing of the road as the same as Converse Phase 1, long side services only.
All right, I had a couple of questions.
Yes.
On the north side, tree belt side, are you affecting the sidewalks?
No, we will be in front of the sidewalks.
Okay.
So in between the road and the sidewalk.
And then one of the things that actually Mass DOT's done very well with the 91 Viaduct project is communication. And I'm glad to hear your Director of Communications here, because we need to be able to talk to several towns and let them know when we're having problems in Converse, because as the town manager said, that road is a main artery for East Longmeadow, Hamden, Wilbraham, all of those residents use that. So if you could help us in some way to be able to reach out so people will understand there's a problem.
We can certainly do that. I mean, we do reach out to the residents. As a matter of fact, we communicate with them when we're coming to town for a project, during the project, and we actually sent them all letters and said we weren't going to run their services until the spring of this year, of next year. So now I'm going to have to communicate back to them that if we get permission tonight, we will be running those services starting in January. I believe that's the timeline.
And I guess my other concern is, it's a short timeline, because we're breaking ground on a $5 million project beginning of March. So if you have a heavy winter, my
For the Mass
concern.
DOT project?
The Mass DOT project, am I correct, Stephen? It's the beginning of March, so,
Yeah, I mean, there is a potential for schedule conflict.
yeah.
If I might add as well, we have been in contact with Paul Kelly of the Mass DOT, and we have spoken to him about if there was some overlap between our project and their groundbreaking, and he said he does not foresee any problems, and he is going to research and talk to his construction specialists out there as well, and he is going to come back with us if there would be any big issues with if there was a little overlap at the end there.
So I'd appreciate if you keep communicating with them as you will with us throughout the phases of
Of
this
course,
project.
yes.
That would be wonderful.
And if you could let me know which surrounding cities and towns you would just like us to get communication out to, I'll make sure that happens.
I'm sure the town manager will be working with you on that.
Perfect.
And I think this really points up your announcements as how important it is for people to sign up for, we do traffic as well as DPW issues, so they'll know when you're having construction, where you are, so we hopefully will move the traffic away from the area you'll be working in.
I just have a follow-up question about if the trenchless process doesn't, can't be used in place and we have to dig a trench, what's the process for blocking Converse? I mean, the one small area of Columbia was digging up on Route 5, which was closer to what I'll call the north end of Route 5. I mean, there were some evenings at 5 o'clock that place was just it was down to one lane and it was a mess. And as bad as that, and that was pretty bad, it's going to be worse on Converse Street backing people up all the way. How can we control the timing of road closures, or how roads are closed, or who you're working with to try to maintain two lanes of, a lane of traffic in either way? I mean, that's what really bothers me about this. If we've got to dig up the road, Columbia, I don't know who's in charge of the Route 5 project. They're literally digging one plate worth. I don't know if you even know the site I was talking about, but it was a valve, I think, wasn't it, Stephen, that they were?
Well, there was two.
Okay.
There was one by Edgewood,
No, there's one much further
and then there was one
north.
down by Farmington.
Right, and
Yeah.
it seemed like they had that down to one lane at the worst times of the day, and
If
I think that was a leak.
Beyond 5, it sounds like it might have been an emergency job, not a
no,
construction
because
job. I'm not sure.
this had been going on. This was going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. If it was an emergency, it was a long time. I mean, anyway, the question still remains of how do we control? What does Columbia do to control traffic? Whether it's extra duty officers or I mean, I assume we're not going to be involved as a DPW. So
No, generally speaking, I think you guys hired officers
Yes.
when you guys did the installation at Phase 1, so I assume you'd follow the
We
same.
do the same thing, and if it's a busy enough street and you think that we
it's a
should have
busy
more.
enough street.
Oh, I know the street
Yeah.
quite well, but if you feel like the number of detail officers that we're asking for, we should increase that, we're happy to do that.
And I'm not
Yeah.
sure more officers do the trick. If Converse Street goes down to one lane at the wrong time of the day,
We have to let people know, stay away from Congress Street.
well,
and
it's going to be
go
backed up to
Sumner or
Dwight
somewhere
Road on
else.
one
Yeah.
side and
Well,
back up to 91
I mean, I
on the
think
other side.
the bottom, they do have two detail officers on most jobs, not just one. And it really isn't, the details are secondary to the fact that there's just a space and
Right.
volume component to
Right.
this that just isn't gonna work no matter how many cops you have standing there. But I think the one thing is that, Converse Street is gonna be that way all summer. Probably for the better part of 2017, Converse Street is going to be a challenge. And I know it's a heavily traveled road, which speaks to the need of the improvements that we're making. And it's going to be, we are going to work with Mass DOT and their contractor, as well as Columbia Gas, to make sure we're providing information on Facebook and everything else. But it's still, providing information isn't going to mask the fact that it's going to be a challenging regional traffic issue. I do want to go back and touch on one point just real quick before we move on. That is, I think the work that was done on Edgewood, and maybe it was 2 years ago, but that stands out as an example of, that was a moratorium road. The Mass DOT had done the Cooley Brook project and repaved it, and it was all brand new, and they came in and cut it and put a patch in. Laurel Street, that was just done, now has a patch in it as well. And this is the part that.
Merriweather has a patch on it.
Merriweather's a patch as well, and I think, the town, like in all communities, the town's relationship with Columbia is both broad and deep. We do a lot with them, and Merriweather is actually an example of, that was a challenging site and a challenging excavation, and I think our contractor and our Department of Public Works had some level of responsibility on that as well. Columbia stuck with us and had staff there all the time because they were concerned about leaks and everything else. So there was we work together, like we do a lot of things, but I think it's more having them hear from the board that, we have higher expectations for the notice requirements for things like this, and that we don't like having our moratoriums not honored, and better foresight into planning. I mean, notice was not an issue in this situation. I think it's more, better communication in real time while we're in the field. And I know it's challenging in the summertime because there's a lot of construction going on, but we just need to be better about it so we all understand, so we don't get to January and have to make, adjustments like this.
Stephen,
Yeah, just-
I kind of.
I just had one more thing. And do you have a protocol regarding weather? Because that would be another issue with a road like that. If you were going to do something that would reduce traffic and it was inclement weather, we could have a lot of accidents in town, and that isn't something we'd want to have. What is your policy?
So I can tell you there's no strict guideline as of, snowfall totals. There's no there's a certain depth of snowfall we can't work in. It's more so of constant conversation with the DPW, figuring out what's safe when we can work out there. If there's any thing where the roads are going to be sloppy, there's ice on the ground, or there's a decent amount of snowfall, I can tell you we will not be out there working that day. It's
Okay.
because public safety is of utmost importance to us as well. We won't risk that for the project.
And we really rely on Mario to give us week-to-week permission, really,
Mhm.
depending on the forecast of the weather. And that's the same in every municipality that we work in.
Great, thank you.
And Mark?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Stephen's comments, because my sense is that our moratorium has become a suggestion to Columbia Gas and not a moratorium. And we've listed at least 4 streets in town that within months of having totally paved them, having told Columbia came back and said, oh yeah, but Edgewood Road, I need to do this, or whatever it is. And that's my beef here, is that, you know, a moratorium means moratorium. It doesn't mean, gee, you know, we're trying to, it applies to everybody except Columbia Gas, do whatever you want to, don't worry about our streets. We pay a ton of money to renovate our streets. We have a plan, a budget. We spend, you know, right now we're spending $1 million a year redoing roads in this town, and between Chapter 90 and supplemental funds we're putting in. And to have Columbia Gas continue to come back here, and after we've dug up a road, say, oh, now we want to fix the main underneath it, just sticks me the wrong way. And again, I don't need to dwell on this. Columbia Gas is going to do what they need to do. There's safety issues, there's all that kind of stuff. But our moratorium really does mean moratorium. It doesn't mean, if you'd like to, please don't do it. If you don't want to, that's okay too. It's not okay to.
Well, moratoriums are very important to us, too.
You wouldn't know it in this town.
And we are working very diligently with DPW directors, their staff, and paving contractors. It's typically what happens is we'll be asking Mario for his paving list in the next month. What are his plans for 2017? We take that paving list and we review it with our projects to see if there's any collaborative projects that we can do together and schedule conveniently for both of us. We then look at all of the compliance work that needs to be done, the surveys for leak detection. We go through hoops to make sure that if you're going to pave this road, we're not planning to come back for the next 5 years for any reason. And a lot of times, we aren't aware of what the paving contractor schedules are. So, as much as we don't like to say it, we might have not gotten out there before the paving contractors have started. But what we're doing this year, because we don't want to keep facing this issue in any of the 60 municipalities we're in, we're inviting DPW directors along with their intended and their contracted paving contractors to explain to them all of the work that goes into our work in a street before they come out and pave. We're hoping that's going to help a little bit. It certainly can't hurt. And that's another project that we're going to undertake just to try to improve the way that we're working with municipalities and not having people such as you upset about every time we have to come out to repair an unanticipated leak. We're trying to get all those grade 2 leaks repaired well before the 12 months that's required, so we don't have to be involved in this sort of thing again. The last thing we want is to have you upset. And clearly
What I was
you
going to say
are.
is if this isn't allowed, then the DOT project's way backed up, or they do it and you're facing the same thing where they have to come back and recut the road.
So,
Well,
yeah.
That's
So
the
we-
sum of it.
So you're right, so we're not, you know.
We have
We
to
don't
do
have
it
a
now.
choice.
We have to
Yeah.
have you do the work now, in the
But-
winter.
But it's our obligation to the people who live in that area to make sure their life is, the disruption of their life is minimized here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
from what I've gotten, and I've gotten plenty over the years, it's the rumble of trucks down Converse Street that drive those people crazy. They literally say their houses shake
So-
and their walls crack. And so that's why I started out there. And Mario, I'm gonna, ask you to just be diligent on behalf part of the town to, because it will settle and it'll need to be fixed again. So we
And
don't
Stephen,
have-
you'll follow up with the communications, especially to the other
And
towns,
that's-
let those
that's
trucks
bottom
know
line, right?
that it's just not going to be a really good route the
What
next,
I'm hearing is
route
that they
2017.
at least understand.
Any other questions for them?
I just hope that everyone who wants a residential gas service on that road has been in contact with you. So we, next year they don't say, well, we have 8 more houses or something. Do you probably announce that you're in the area?
We canvass everybody on the street.
Okay.
And make sure that if there's anybody still using oil or some other form of heat other than gas, they have an opportunity to convert now.
Yeah.
Because again, with the moratorium in place, they're not gonna have another opportunity for 5 years.
Right.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming. I appreciate it. And I look forward to further communication with the DPW and town manager.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
yeah.
And Stephen, also, could you, when you do all those communications, the traffic officer will also let the school kids know who are walking and the walking to school issues. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go to select board comments, but I am going to move you down, Stephen, to after new business again. But if there are any select board comments, Mark?
Yeah, I have a few, but you have to give me a second to just pull this up. They're all related to the weather and our recent first snowfall of the year. And I guess, I don't know if it's a comment or reminder, Saturday driving around town, it was pretty interesting to note that there were a whole lot of people who had already figured out a way to plow their driveways into the street, and I'd like to make sure we remind people not to plow their driveways into the street. They're not supposed to be doing that, and if you have a contractor who plows your driveway, please ask them to not plow into the street, and if they do, they've got to clean up the street. Also, just a reminder, a personal pet peeve is to clear fire hydrants along the way, which I think needs to be done in due course. I can tell you, on my way over here today, there were 3 or 4 fire hydrants between my house and here that I saw have not been plowed out within the 24 hours that we have to. So I'd really ask that people be reminded that they need to do that. A couple other comments. And I don't know whose responsibility this is, Stephen. It may be our building department, but we've already got a situation, and I commented it the last time, that the Long Meadow Shops parking lot was a mess. They're now down about 30 parking spaces because of their snow. And I remember at the hearing, we said that specifically wasn't allowed. So consider this my formal complaint to the building department to ask them to remove the snow so we can get back the parking spaces. Because I think that's just not, I remember the planning board commission, they said, no, storing snow there isn't something that we generally let them do because it cuts into the allowable parking spaces, one way or the other.
I think they do have snow storage area on their plan, but they can't exceed that. And I think the comment was, we'll clear snow when it gets to a certain point because we want to have the parking for our customers, but they are allowed some measure of snow storage, I just don't remember where.
Okay.
But it's something to keep an eye on.
Let's keep an eye on. The final thing I just asked Stephen is that this was last year we had almost no measurable snow, I think, in the whole year, and so this is really the first storm we've had with our new DPW crew, and I was wondering what mechanism you wanted to use, maybe I should have said this while Mario was here, for feedback to the DPW about any issues that may have arisen. You want people to call the DPW, how do they do that? There are a few streets that I think came out a little narrower than they should have, or whatever it was, and should individuals be calling the DPW, you think, or? I mean, I don't want to set people up.
Town manager?
I haven't observed that people find a difficult pathway to register a complaint in town, but, no, I think in all sincerity, Mark, you can, people do call the DPW regularly. We do have the YourGov app that people do use. You can report, insufficient width in the plows. There's a variety of reasons why the streets don't get opened up to full width. Sometimes there's not great curb lines, I'll be honest with you, I haven't gotten a single complaint about this past Saturday snow event, and that's, and Mario's still in the hallway, I could probably bring him back in, but I'm pretty sure he feels the same way. We evaluate success on things like that by the lack of complaints. So no complaints means we did a good job.
I'm not sitting here issuing complaint. I'm just saying, there are some that noted. I'll also give my comment that I'm going to give at every report about Avondale Road and the barricade. It was hit by a snowplow. So the street that's narrow was already down to 1 lane, is now down to it's about 3/4 of a lane. and the snowplow hit the barricade, which was probably expected, and also the signs are pretty much gone right now. But something's got to be done, because it's an accident waiting to happen, or in this case, an accident that did happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other select board comments?
Well, just a couple of things. I did go to the high school on Saturday. There was a big wrestling tournament, the Early Bird Open, and the town did a great job. The school department, everything was cleaned up, made it easy for spectators to get in there, and so they did that part very well. The other thing is the Council on Aging had their 50th anniversary of since their start, and I was at that ceremony last Thursday, and I really enjoyed it. And the room was packed. It was really a full house. They must have thought Marie was going to be there.
Oh, no, they knew you were speaking.
But it was a full house, and it was a really nice day. And it's, there's so many positive relationships, and we, from our comments today, how important it is to have a place like that in a community, especially for residents who've been here a long time, and appreciate the relationships they have with other people in town. So it was nice.
Any other comments? All right, so we're going to skip town manager reports. We'll move you down, and I want to move, we'll skip minutes and review of calendar fees and go down to our first three topics under old business. And that is the adult center site, Greenwood master planning and programming. So we'll start with those two. And the reason I put both of those on is I'm trying to do things a little bit differently, where we have lots of groups come in and speak to us, and we really try to go into a topic in depth. And that's why I invited Parks and Recs to come in, and we had Amy Sada also come in, and Barry Jarvis, and speak about what the needs of those two departments are. And I know that the Adult Center Building Committee had come and recommended that we relook at the Greenwood Center. And I wanted to know if we wanted to discuss the Greenwood Center as the possible site for the new Adult Center. Anyone have some comments on that? Or do they want to just talk about the programming issues that were discussed the last time we were here?
I would say that all the feedback that I get from people in town is that why don't you just do it there? It's so difficult to get a project done in town when you're taking up parkland, fields. You just can't go there. And so I get a lot of comments of why doesn't it's there now? Keep it there. So I think that that's a good idea to focus on redoing it there if possible.
Mark?
Bill, I get the same comments from different people, I suspect. But my personal take is that we probably ought to be looking at a combination of new plus renovate. And I say that because there's just some things that you can do when you do new plus renovate that you can't do just in a straight renovation. You can create different spaces from what you've had before. You can use different systems. You can also spiff up what looks like a 1957 school, which it is, to look a little bit better if you're willing to do something additional to it. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm an architect and I know what needs to be done, but Bill, I agree with you that my sense is the consensus of the town and what would likely pass is do something with the center you have. And I think if we said, we're gonna fix up the inside and we're gonna maybe build on a X number of square feet or fill in the courtyard or do something behind, whatever it is, likely to strike a note with people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've looked at these plans quite a bit, and I really, I guess I like the plan that the committee was supporting, which was the plan number 4. I did kind of like the idea of maybe even having more than one access to Greenwood, because there's more than one thing going on, and if we connect it to Nevins or something. But, I guess that's, we look at this part in the process, and there's still a lot more conceptualization that needs to be developed. One of the things that was nice about going to the senior center last Thursday is I really got a good picture about how much they need to grow, and I think that it just reminds me of something I've been aware of. Baby boomers, everything they've touched as they've moved through the different age groups, they've changed dramatically. And I think that they also, I get the sense they're ready to change retirement quite a bit. And if we give them a center they can do that with, it sounds like it would be a very exciting place. And I think we should move forward in terms of getting, plans, or I don't know what the next phase is, but, I'm in support of doing something either. So I guess if we look at some of the areas that we're going to grow in, and then look at, which one of these 4 plans is the best one. Now, my understanding is plan number 4 is really what they've reached. So, I don't want to waste too much time going backwards, to tell you the truth.
I'd like to build off what you said, which is really interesting, that this new group coming up is going to reinvent retirement.
Yeah.
And I think what we heard from Amy and Barry, the 2 departments, is that they're not looking to just build a bigger building. They really need to build a facility for people, and Mary Beth's describing thousands that are more coming up. And the way people used to use the center 5 years ago is not the way they're going to use it in 20 years. So I think this is going to require a new conceptualization of where we're going in the future and what is going to be best for the seniors, and not just the active ones, but those that are disabled, have trouble walking. And right now, I sometimes are on the cane too, and that's a long hallway. You got to go all the way down that hallway to get to your first event. So I think we need to really sit down and take your department heads and your staff and try to find what is really going to be the best, not just for this park, but also for our seniors in 20, 30 years. Now, that might sound a little ambitious. One of the reasons I wrote a draft motion was for, I think one of the things I heard as they were discussing, oh, there it is that we really need to figure out how to coordinate all of our resources in town. And it's not going to be, even if we renovate Greenwood Park, then where's the 90-foot baseball diamond going to go? How does this work out with the services that are being offered at the high school or all the other nonprofits in town? So I think it could actually be a very fascinating master plan approach that our master planner might be able to bring some interesting dimension to it, rather than just say, we want a 10,000-foot, 15,000-foot building, and we're going to put it right here. I don't think that really will answer all of our questions. I'd like to have what's the best.
So Marie, you're talking about, planning a building based on programs that we want to put in the building. And I think if we design a building to be everything to everybody, that makes it very, very difficult to get consensus on the building, because everybody's going to think it's being built for them or their needs. And the issue has been the adult center and building for the adult center, and I think we ought to focus on that. I'll tell you this: every month we get in our monthly town manager report statistics from all the different department heads, and I continually look at the statistics on the daycare that goes on at Greenwood Center, and there's people in there, and I understand there's children in there, and for the families that use that, I'm sure it's a phenomenal service, but separating the daycare from the before and after school program, I can really understand that maybe daycare isn't a core business of the town. Before and after school programming, I can differentiate that. And because if we really did say we were going to separate those and say, now we've got an entire center to building to turn into an adult center, the possibilities of how you redesign that are very different from if you say, no, we're going to maintain a core of that, a portion of that, or whatever it is, for other services, whether it's the Park and Rec Department, and I really shouldn't be picking on them necessarily for their day school or their daycare or their before and after school, because it could just as easily have been another department that was in there as well. And you know, just to a large extent, I get the sense from what I've heard that the adult center and the council, they feel constrained. We only have this much space, and we can't really move out. We can't do things. It's not really our building. It's kind of where, you know, we're the tenants. And I think the intent I would like to see us do is turn a building into an adult center building, and find other things to do there. Now you can say, well, you know, for the next couple of years, they're not going to need all the space because they're going to grow over a 15 or 20 year period of time, or a 5 or 10 year period. That's great, but at some point, you know, there needs to be a primary tenant and a secondary tenant for every facility we have in town, and we have never established that. Now maybe, you know, that's the place to start.
I think that we all should probably give our ideas to Stephen as he works with the departments, because I have ideas too about what could happen. And then you come back with some draft recommendations, and we will then, you know, make a decision on what we really feel is appropriate. Because you're right, we need to allocate resources. We have limited resources. That is a beautiful park. It's not completely being used, but if we're going to be putting a lot of things down there, we need to probably prioritize some of them.
Yeah. Well, another, I talked to a resident, attractive woman, my wife.
Yes, we're there.
She said,
We're almost in real trouble.
and she was saying, well, you know, we should really take the land behind there that we were talking about, maybe taking as eminent domain and putting fields back there, perhaps even baseball, you know, fields, but, you know, as a way to, I mean, it really makes sense because, you know, folks who are concerned about not having enough field space, you know, if we could, you know, put in this new center, increase field space at the same time, you know, that might be another thing that would be more appealing to the typical voter. Because, I mean, that's it. You know, the big hurdle is always going to be the town meeting, and we want to have something that is going to be appealing to as many people as possible.
And if we do get an architect in there, I remember someone from the building committee said, a good architect, often when they're given a challenge is when they come up with their best plans. And part of this has some beautiful land behind the pool that's terraced. It's an odd shape, but if we get the right architect in there, it might come up with some very interesting, like you said, renovations or brand new in a section we never even imagined. But we need to get moving on the next step.
Is the idea with the old senior center would go?
No, there's no idea at all now.
Because
We're waiting to hear some draft proposals.
Because as part of a master plan, I'd like to see, it's kind of an odd shape. I mean, I don't think you could put a ball field there. You know, because of.
So,
Yeah. Oh, Stephen, you were.
yeah, so let me take a step back first, and say that, you know, we started with the concept of a renovation and an addition. And for the money, which was more than new construction, it wasn't really all that great in terms of meeting the needs of the center. That was point A on our analysis way back with even PVPC way back when. So, and then when we were looking at different alternatives, a newly constructed facility that was built with every efficiency possible for the operations, specifically for what we do and what we want to do in the future, that was determined by every committee that's looked at it to be a better bang for your buck. So we've been through a lot of these sessions and a lot of these discussions already, and I think, you know, I support the idea of saying Greenwood Park in total as the site, and then give us the flexibility to look at all of the park, which we have determined from town council is available for municipal use, for whatever use the board wants to decide. And maybe there is a better alternative for a new building that you get, because I already, you know, we've been at this for a long time. We've been at this for a few years. So I can already tell you where the pressure points on the analysis are going to be. And it's going to be programming for parks, for the children's center, programming for the adult center, other available resources to absorb that programming, but then also revenue we generate from the children's center. You know, it does generate funds for the general fund. So how do we offset that revenue? And then, can you really renovate the existing building in a cost-effective way that at the end of that renovation gives you something that's going to meet your needs today and in the future? And I'm not going to say, no, you can't, because you're right. We haven't really gotten to that level of depth from a design standpoint, and there may be something we haven't thought of. But that's going to be the real issue, and that's something, you know, we're going to work with, I'm going to work with Barry and Amy on the program component. I intend to engage the schools on this as well, because they also offer programming, and perhaps there's better opportunities to partner with them for all the facilities. Look at all of our facilities as opportunities to cite some of these programs. Maybe decentralize some of it. Maybe that's one of our options as well. And then the other pressure point, of course, is what do you do with the existing facility, and then of course the overarching thing, of course, is cost, and not just cost. I think the townspeople are willing to invest in the right project, but there is definitely a business-minded approach you have to take, and you do this for a living. There's a certain amount you can invest, and even if it's more than side by side with another building it would be worth, it's worth it over here because of location or the tenant you have signed up for a long-term lease or what have you. There may be things that make it worthwhile spending more money, but you have to take that business-minded approach for the sake of the investment the taxpayer is going to make. So I think that I do like what you're saying, all of you. Let's look high. Let's aim high, and look at the whole site as an opportunity. And like I said, we don't have the appropriation we have left isn't sufficient to really get a design team on board in a meaningful way. You could get a picture of it, but that's not even worth the paper it's printed on without doing the background work. So I think we can certainly address the programming needs and the space needs and all that other stuff, and kind of a master plan of generally here's where we think things could go. And I think we have to go back to the town and say, we need some additional resources to really fully plan out the design and make that whole entire park the best it can be.
Mark?
Couple of things. First of all, I never like to negotiate or open my negotiation plans in public, but if the leadership on the general government side of the town said we're just going to we've got to move the daycare, childcare, before and after school programs out of Greenwood because it's got to become an adult center. I think the people who use that would help convince the school department and the school committee to find facilities for them, for those programs. And I hate to be so crass as to say, you put a line in the, a line in the sand here, but if we make that decision, I'm convinced that program won't go away. It'll find someplace else that may in fact be more appropriate. I don't know if it is or not. So that's my first step. The second thing though, Stephen, I hear what you're saying about, we need to do things, but I think we need to go to the next town meeting, whenever that is, and hopefully it's before May, but even if we don't do it until May, and we say, here's the plan. It's going to go in Greenwood, and it's going to go at this location. It's not just going to say, we want some money to develop Greenwood Park. We've got to, Tom, I heard you say you support Plan 4, which is where the tennis courts are up on Maple Road. I don't particularly think that's a great location personally, but I think that, we need to make a decision at some point where we want to go. And I'm not sure how much we've got to invest in a detailed design to get to that point, as much as a conceptual design. We're going to build it on the footprint of the current school. We're going to build it in the, way back behind the Molly McAvoy playground. We're going to wherever we're going to put it. I think that's the plan we've got to come forward with, and because I think that's what's going to tell whether the town has support for it. I think once the town supports where it's going, then the details will fall much more quickly. And I'm not sure we've done that. And I'll tell you that one of the things that concerned me about the Bliss Park plan was the first time I saw it, the building was positioned in the back of the park where somebody said, oh, you might be able to get to it from Oakwood. But then by the time it got to the town meeting, it was sitting up there right on the street. And so people didn't really know what they were.
Well, I think.
I mean, it
yeah,
changed.
Well, I
But
think,
that- can I just-
no,
okay.
I think
But the
that
point is, for
we're not-
this, we need to have,
Right.
here's, if you vote on it, here's the footprint it's gonna have, because that's what's gonna get support.
So
from
on the
residents.
motion, do we want to include some here, a draft recommendation and plan?
Yeah,
I mean-
what I'm saying to you is, that's why you need to spend the money on architecture and engineering and landscape architecture. Because there may be challenges subsurface, there may be issues associated with developing a certain corner of the site. I mean, we've looked at it from the aerial photo view, and Mary Beth is in the business, so she's more skilled than most about kind of and Phil Hallahan was involved as well, and kind of looking at some of that, diagnosing it. But it's not the same thing as getting in there and doing site investigation. Neither of you developed a piece of property without doing adequate site investigation due diligence. You didn't go from the aerial photo and invest the money. That's why I'm saying we need to generally identify, like we did with the DPW, where can they go, but tell town meeting to really tell you specifically where it's gonna go and what it's gonna look like, how much it's gonna cost. We need to spend upfront money to do the due diligence. And that's why I'm saying that, because I can give you a box on a piece of land, but it's not worth anything.
Yeah, But my fear, Stephen, is that you won't get an approval for something that's too conceptual, that's not concrete enough. That's my personal opinion.
But I think we will, because people understand, now that we've kind of gone through this with the DPW, I think that town meeting understands, we've done a good job as a group educating town meeting about project development and how we have to take these things in stages. And maybe they won't, but it won't be because they don't like the site, because that's where they told us to go.
Okay, so the motion I wrote was, I move to renovate Greenwood Park to include a new adult center. The town manager shall review all town-wide resources and develop draft recommendation for programming and infrastructure for the senior services and park and rec departments. Draft recommendations will be presented to select board by the first meeting in March. And the reason I said the first meeting in March is because we've got to get the warrant articles up and going. And then I think the residents need to know what the warrant articles are at a decent amount of time, so we can actually start discussion and educating what the warrant articles are to people, such as potential siting and things like that. So we do have to have a little meat on the bones when we go into town meeting.
So, yeah, I would be willing to forward that motion, because I think the other thing that concerns me is that interest rates are going up, and I really don't think we need, we can't wait. There's no reimbursement for the senior center, so we have to get the best interest rates we can, and so.
That's true.
So I'll forward that motion.
Is there a second?
Is that the motion we want to do, though?
Yeah, I don't
No,
think
you
that's
can
the motion
change
we
the
wanna
motion
do.
too, or rewrite it.
Because it sounds to me, and I think it's good advice, we really need some design. So, I mean, we can't, what if it doesn't work there?
Well, let me say this, we do have some funds left over from previous appropriation that is allocated for finding truly suitable space. If I can employ that appropriation to provide some level of due diligence on the site, of course I'll do that. I just don't want to overpromise and then not be able to deliver a site. I'm gonna go as far as the resources I have will take me, but to present recommendations, but it may not be sufficient to get you a defined footprint on the site, and so I don't want to promise that as a deliverable.
Do we need to include the resources the spending of the resources?
We don't have the resources until the
There's-
town meeting.
We were given
appropriates it.
$30,000.
Oh,
That includes
those have
design.
already been approved by town meeting. We don't
Yeah,
have to.
we can spend that now.
Oh,
we
I
don't
see what you're
need to-
saying.
we
I
don't
thought
need
you
to
meant we
afford
had to
it.
go back to.
No, we have
Okay.
some appropriation left, and we, of course, will employ that to the greatest effect possible, but that doesn't necessarily get you all the way.
But Marie, I think we've got to give you a hint. We can't just say, go find a place in Greenwood Park. I think that's just, your $30,000 won't go far enough and won't get us anything. If we got to start looking at a bunch of things, I think it's worth narrowing it down and saying either, where the tennis courts are, where the, give you some idea of a primary goal that is say, it was a great idea, but the subsoil won't support it, and there's a, you can't put roadway access to it or whatever it is, so what's your second choice? But to me, that's the way to approach this, as opposed to saying,
So do you
look at
want-
everything and tell me where it is. I think,
Well, let me say, I'm going to disagree but agree. I think that the real options out there aren't too hard to figure out, but I'd rather not be prescriptive. I'd rather not be prescriptive at this point, because the ideas you guys were just talking about, if you prescribe it now, then the creative exercise of really looking, which has not, it's been done, but not at a in-depth level of looking truly, walk the perimeter of the park and look at every conceivable square foot as an opportunity. You lose that opportunity by being prescriptive at this phase of the game. I think that the spots that we are pretty sure right now are going to work out for the best will probably still be that way, but let's fill the bucket, as you said, on a different effort in terms of looking at everything. I think I think we can't limit ourselves at this stage of the game, because so much of this is too new to this process. The introduction of the entire park as an opportunity is a brand new thing for us.
but I don't want, I'd hate to see resources and effort go down to an option which has no chance of being approved, even
Well-
though it may be a great technical option, but it won't get approved because of where it is or how it's presented.
We could ask for a
And-
preliminary report earlier than the beginning of March, but the actual draft recommendations won't come. In other words, we want to have more input, and he can come with maybe the end of January, beginning of February, sort of right in the middle of the budget season, to say what you were able to make your recommendations
And I tried to make
on.
clear the site planning thing is not going to be ready
Yeah.
for March. I thought at the outset, in terms of we're going to get that started and go down, but that's a lot of work. We do have to do the work on the programming, which is going to drive the size of the building, the design. We're going to approach this now from a dedicated. We're no longer speculating. We're now developing a program and a project.
I'm actually feel more comfortable with this the way it reads now, because it's not our decision at the end of the day anyways.
It's the town will make the final decision, and I know, Mark, you're afraid of it not making it a town meeting, but if we don't do the actual work and the process, I think it will be more likely to fail, other than to say, well, we're going to put it right here. We
Yeah.
need to show that we've done the work, and this is why this is the best location and the building.
I just want to know why you chose wording of renovate Greenwood Park, because that's just,
Well, in other words, I was saying we're
It's
going to
the
look
park,
at the
not-
whole park. In other words, we're looking at
so
the whole
what,
park.
we'll move the pool, move the tennis courts, is that all part
Maybe-
of this project? We're going to turn
Maybe
this
he will
project into
say,
a $30
maybe he'll
million
say move
project.
maybe he'll say move the tennis courts. Maybe he's going to say move the, I don't know, but we're looking at the whole facility. So move to,
It's just that word.
do you want to
just object
change
to the word
renovate?
renovate.
What would be a better word? To plan, redesign, to consider the whole park, or what is a better word you're looking for?
I think what we're saying is we want to help design a new adult center.
Yeah, I think that.
And in the general Greenwood Park area is where it's going to go. I think that's what we heard from
Okay,
the
so
town.
you were
I
looking,
moved to select Greenwood Park as the site of the new adult center, of the new or renovated adult center.
Yeah, that's.
okay,
So,
I moved to
in
select Greenwood Park
As the new or renovated adult center, is what that should say then. And then everything else can stand.
And then you would be coming back anyways, because you are looking at the whole park and all the facilities. Because I guess we're saying later, for draft recommendations for programming and infrastructure for social services and Greenwood departments. We could say at Greenwood Park.
But Marie, this motion is selecting, and I'll take your wording, Stephen, select Greenwood Park as the site of a new or renovated adult center. It then says the town manager shall review all townwide resources and develop draft recommendations for programming and infrastructure for senior services and park and recreation department. I mean, that's way beyond Greenwood Park, and you know, we could.
Well, I think one of the things we discovered when we had the joint meeting here with the two departments is there is a lot of issues going on. There's duplications of services. There are currently facilities available throughout the town. I thought when we listened to Park and Rec speak to us, the committee, we understood that there really is a lot of decision-making that has to go down into the decision on the programming and the infrastructure. You can't just say, well, we're putting the building right here.
Yeah, no, you have to include the services in the park and recreation departments, because we know that the minute you say, well, we want to go right in the middle of the ball field, it's over, right?
Well, the other thing is, right now, the functions out there follow the form.
Yes.
And we're rebooting, and we could potentially have the form follow the functions, so we need to assess those functions first.
So let's just do that.
That is what this does.
So what does that have to do with the first sentence? I mean,
It's just the board is saying affirmatively, we choose Greenwood Park, the whole park, as the site. Somewhere in Greenwood Park, we're going to put this thing.
And the second part is the deliverable.
Yeah.
We want this delivered to us, draft a plan, recommendations by the beginning of March, so then we will be ready for the next step, which is town meeting, so that we'll actually have the resources to keep this ball moving.
To then go to town meeting and say, here is what we think could be done here. Can we have some more money to really study this in depth, and then present something, a vision for the future, a plan for the future that would be fundable. Right.
Marie, I've been putting together a couple of thoughts here, but, because I think that, I think it ought to be, whether it's select or whatever, I was going to say, we'd affirm that Greenwood Park is the site of the new or renovated adult center, and ask the town manager to review available town resources and develop draft recommendations for programming and infrastructure for the senior services and park and recreation departments that are currently associated with Greenwood Park.
Well, I don't think, I don't want to narrow him. To say, well, someone will say, well, that doesn't relate to Greenwood Park. I mean, I don't think we need to narrow him that way. I mean, I've agreed to let in new or renovated adult center under the select Greenwood, but I don't think the rest has to be narrowed.
Well, so we're gonna get into things that are in Bliss Park. We're gonna get into the Blinn tennis courts. We're gonna get into.
Well, sure, because maybe he's decided he's going to move the Parks and Rec, and Barry says, why don't we put the 90-foot baseball field in Turner Park? Maybe we're going to build an extra, what do you call it? We're going to move a field hockey behind Greenwood Park. In other words, by just saying it's only Greenwood facilities, you're not.
And therefore, if it's a 90-foot baseball field at Greenwood Park, it's currently associated with Greenwood Park, we got to find another place to put it.
I know.
If it's a, are we going to talk about the Park and Rec soccer program, and there's no soccer at Greenwood Park? Because that's what this says.
Let me give you an example. Why, I agree with Marie that shouldn't be limited. The tennis courts, putting it where the tennis courts are has already been thrown out there as an idea. I think that idea has some potential, but it's just something that's been thrown out there as a possibility. Well, how many people play tennis there? How often? Would that create a capacity issue at other tennis courts if that was displaced? That's all that, to me, that's all that part of the directive means, is if you're going to displace a function from Greenwood Park, you have to look at where it would go and how it would displace something elsewhere in town, right? I think that's what I got from that.
But that's why I put in the Park and Recreation Department programs currently associated with Greenwood Park. I want you to focus on the areas that get displaced or modified because of what you're considering, and not worry about the Parks and Recreation Department programs that have nothing to do with Greenwood Park.
I think he can just look at everything. and see. I don't see we need to narrow it, and then you'll say, well, that has
But
nothing to do with
Marie, but
anything.
we're gonna make this so broad that we're gonna end up with a Parks and Recreation Department study instead of an adult center study. That's
No.
my concern.
I don't believe we will, because
Of course you
I
will.
think the town manager knows what we're looking for.
Fine.
Mm.
I
Yeah, because
disagree with the motion.
what comes up all the time, people I talk to, they say, well, why don't you have a better long-range plan? Because you got a couple of middle schools you might knock one down. I mean, it's all gonna be kind of thought about.
That's right, Bill, but I don't think you can come back and say, well, we don't have to worry about a 90-foot field because in 8 years, there'll be no middle school where Glenbrook is now, so we can put it there. I mean, that's not gonna be an appropriate answer.
Nobody's saying that.
No, but I'm just saying that if it's not associated with Greenwood, you know, yeah, we'd love to do the great master plan and take everything into account, but we gotta focus. And the focus ought to be on what we have there, how we're gonna move the things that we have there somewhere else to make sure that necessary and expected programming is continued, and yet make room for what we wanna make room for. And if we start getting into looking at all the Parks and Recreation Department programs, potentially, we're gonna go off on a wild goose chase, but, and get lost in what it's
Yeah.
doing. All I'm asking you to do is narrow this down to those areas. If you don't wanna do it, it's not gonna happen, but I
No, because
I
it's
don't
talking about
agree.
programming infrastructure for the senior services, and that, I feel, is looking at 30,000 feet, and I think it's really important to look at 30,000 feet, so that we know what we want for the next 20, 30 years. I think we have to start that exercise has to begin.
Fine.
And he can't go that far afield, because we're asking for this all to be done by the beginning of March. That's not much time. Now, I know that the departments have been working on this already, and I'm sure there's a lot been sitting in there, the back of their folders, but I want to hear the
I don't
full
think
story of
we're-
what can be
I don't think
done.
we're gonna get focused enough to get something that we can work with. That's my concern with the way you've got it written.
So the question is, right now, there was a motion on the floor to renovate Greenwood Park to include an adult center. Is there a desire to, well, first of all, there's been no second on that motion.
No second on that motion, so we
that-
have
to withdraw it.
So the motion's dropped. Is there another motion that's on the floor?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Well, what about the revised motion that you were talking about? Yeah,
So
I
you,
would second,
the move to select Greenwood as the new or renovated adult center?
correct.
As
And
the
the
site-
town major-
As the site
Select Greenwood as the site
of a new or renovated adult center,
of a new or renovated adult center, and
period.
the rest of it is the same?
And the rest of it.
Now, let me show you this so you're not,
Yeah.
yeah, we're working together on this. So
Yeah.
read to me what motion you want.
Okay.
And what changes you want.
So I move to select the Greenwood site of a new or renovated adult center. The town manager shall review townwide resources and develop draft recommendations for programming and infrastructure for the senior services and the Park and Recreation Department. Draft recommendations will be presented to the select board by the first meeting in March.
Is there a second on that one?
I'll second that. I understand your concern, Mark, but I don't, but I like the flexibility of that. You know, I also want to concentrate on this project at Greenwood, but you have to, what if something comes up? You know, Parks and Rec is over there, maybe they don't need to be there. Yeah, it's just that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I barely, I'm concerned I'm barely gonna get this thing done to begin with. And so, believe me, the scope, the report is gonna have the most limited scope we can possibly have and still do it right. So I hear your concerns, Mark, trust me. Give me a little bit of leeway on it. I think I think we know what the board wants, and your concerns are understood.
Tom, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment that you include Greenwood Park, not just Greenwood, in your motion.
Oh, Greenwood Park, yes, no problem.
I move to select Greenwood Park as the site of a new or renovated adult center.
Okay, so that's an amendment? Is there?
Yeah.
Okay, so is there a second on the amendment?
I'll second the amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
So is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, now back to the original motion. Is there further discussion on the original motion? Yeah. All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next topic, which is the Permanent Building Committee. We were discussing, let's see. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago, and we almost went to the vote. And then Richard recommended that we speak further with Jody, who established it, to see exactly what,
It's town manager of Westford, Jody Ross.
yes, because that's how he got the idea. And we, the town manager and I had a conference call with her today, and it was actually very interesting. She says it's been a very valuable element to the town, and it's advisory to the select board, and it's a way of pulling projects through and keeping them moving. And she said it was really important to that. The only tweak, I said, is there any way you would have changed this or found that it's been weak? And she said, well, we really needed to include renovations, so they added that. And that was actually something that we had the original concept, was anything $50,000 would go into it. And the only other thing I thought of adding to it is, we're always talking about what's our 10-year plan, what's our 15-year plan, where are we looking in our building needs in the future, and maybe this group could make reports and recommendations to us on what should go into the pipeline and where. But she described a very interesting communication back and forth between the select board and this group, which she says a very hardworking group, coming them and will bring plans, and then the select board will make changes and pushback. So really, nothing gets to town meeting until it comes through us as a select board, but this is just another tool for us, which is an advisory board.
It actually, she works most directly with them to kind of like on the, let's say, day-to-day. They do meet weekly, which I was amazed at. But they have a lot of responsibility. But she works really as the staff point of contact with them quite a bit. And so it will work very much like, Adult Center Building Committee or the DPW committee has worked, where they get together, it's a group of volunteers, they go through detailed information, either select board liaison or town manager attends the meeting, kind of keeps track of things, advises the committee on, well, this is where, the other select board members, think that things should go this way, so don't get too far down the path on that, or, here are some design choices you should look at that fit in better with the overall plan of the community, just feedback like that. The key difference, and this is something we've been saying from the beginning, is you don't have silos on projects. It's the same group looking at all the projects, and people. I know people have been making that comment about the long range plan. It drives me nuts because it's impossible. I haven't figured out a way to do a long range plan with town meeting because we had a town meeting say we could go to Wolf Swamp Fields, and now we can't. So it's hard to plan when a particular town meeting may be overwhelmed by one particular flavor of special interest. So we, as you know, Bill, from reading the reports, we work on the 3 projects and others all the time, and we're always reporting on them and giving information. But when you have it centralized in one building committee, people can go to that one meeting, which are publicly held, posted meetings, or read the minutes and say, here's what this committee is thinking about for all these building projects. And interestingly, they were involved in the site selection process, and the Westford group is involved in site selection and gives select board feedback on picking sites. And that's something we had kind of shied away from, but that maybe is something that would be a good component of the committee, just to give a group of resident volunteers who have some specialized knowledge in planning, architecture, design, what have you, kind of take the first blush of heat on a particular site selection question. But the language they have was a lot stronger. But in practice, it is an advisory committee like the ones we've had, so I felt totally comfortable. I think the language that we proposed fits with how that committee actually works. So I would recommend, I think it would be a good idea to kind of consolidate the efforts at this point.
And did she talk much about the membership and how membership selection?
We have, the documents that we gave out initially were their kind of, their mission, their, I don't know if it's not bylaw, but it's how they are, the types of memberships they have. You can pick whatever you want.
Yeah.
We can customize it for Long Meadow, but generally, it is it's not an advocacy group. It is a specialized group of people that look at, who have, like I said, you may have someone who's a mechanical engineer on there who can understand when boiler projects come up, is abreast of the new trends in, HVAC technology. You may have a registered architect or a landscape architect, somebody like that, who can look at projects with a keen eye and a current understanding of those fields.
She talked about someone from the select board and someone from the finance committee, and I asked her, well, what about the school and the
They're
school
not-
building? And they haven't built a school in 14 years.
Yeah.
And they don't have any on the horizon.
She did
So
get back to me, by
said-
the way,
She did?
that they are non-voting members. They're just the liaison role.
Okay. Mhm.
And given that it is an advisory group, that makes sense.
Mark?
The proposal I see in my packets changed significantly from what we were originally proposed, because what I thought I heard, at least, the first time, was a committee that would act as a building committee, like we used as a reference, the Long Meadow School Building Committee, and they would act at it for all building projects. And now what I think I'm seeing is a committee that's A, advisory, B, is got, some fiduciary responsibility to report to the town meeting. It sounds like they're about the finances of buildings, which sounds like it's stepping on toes of the finance committee, who's got to do that, or at least duplicating the effort of the finance committee in reporting it. It says review proposals by others within 90, this has really moved from what I thought we were looking for, which was a permanent building committee that could act on behalf of the town for all buildings, and instead really be, and then we got this whole thing in there that says temporary members, but temporary members, they have no authority. Why don't we just call them consultants? The committee can appoint temporary members who can't vote, and can't do anything there, but so that they're consultants to the committee. I guess I've lost track of this thing and seem to think that
I'm not even looking at the draft. What it comes down to is, I'm talking about us establishing a committee. That's what they did, and they went into this whole elaborate of what definitions were and everything.
Well,
I'm
that's
saying-
what we were sent, Marie.
No, that was what we were sent the last time.
And
Now
that's-
I'm just,
It's in the packet for this
Right,
time,
I
too.
asked.
You resent it?
So, we
Yeah.
had an original version. It didn't make sense. I said at the time, don't get hung up in the language.
Yeah.
It was a cut and paste. You're kind of doing that to me again. I redlined it to show what I think, to mirror what I thought the intent of it was. I never used MSBA as a reference point because it is not a good reference point, because the MSBA, school building committees are set by statute, including the membership. That it's not a good apples to apples comparison. The committees we have are really the apples to apples, and that's what we confirmed today on the
Right.
phone.
And what Jody had said, it was very interesting, the town manager said, she said, it really depends on the personality and the culture of your town. And that's why I went to a very simple motion that we're establishing this committee, and as it evolves, we'll see what's really gonna fit in, because she's not dealing with the school. We're talking about 3 projects coming up in the next few years, and this could end up being a very strong, we want to get the right people, appoint the right people on it. It allow communication to grow. It allows coordination of efforts between the 3 projects as we move forward. And it allows us to really talk about a systematic plan. So that's why this whole draft thing that was more elaborate than I was going to go into, I just said, let's start establishing the committee. Let them and let us work together, could have a subcommittee on what their mission is, but let's start getting it moving. We're in the middle of some major projects here, and start appointing people in January.
So you want to create a committee before we know what we're going to ask them to do?
No, I said very clearly in the motion what I think we should ask them to do.
What? The committee
And I
report to the
even
select board
mentioned it
twice a year. That's all
Report
it
to,
says.
no, it says, shall report to the select board twice a year, shall appoint, well, and it tells what it's gonna consist of. We're
it just
talking
says
about,
who's on
we
it.
review and advise the select board regarding all building projects. And I said, how many times do they report directly to select board? And the town manager said, well, actually, a lot of it's coming through me, because I'm attending these meetings with them. If something comes up from this meeting that I feel the select board needs to tell about, I could talk about it, she says, every single select board meeting. If we decide we want them to come in front of us 4 times a year, we could say 4 times a year, or we could say we want a report in every monthly packet. So the only thing this motion is it's delineating what they're going to be addressing, how often they're reporting to us that they are advisory, and what it consists of. So of those 3 sections of the motion, we can change it as much as we want. And then when we get our committee in front of us, if we've decided we really slightly want to change the mission, we can do that. But I think we need something in town that filters through all of these major things that we're talking about.
Is that because you don't think we can do that ourselves?
No, I don't think we have the time.
No, I think we need a both building committee, and I'm hearing it from everybody.
Well, as I look at, I think, again, membership is a key thing, and so there's a couple of things that I've been thinking of. And one would be that if we're going to have someone from the finance committee, someone from the school board, or the select board, those groups should vote that person as a nominee to then get a select board approval. Because I'd rather, that they know, those groups know the personality of the people, and they would choose a good person, And I think, because that's important, I think we really want to make sure that the person that gets selected is that the committee that brings them before us really approves of that person, and says this is the right person. And then, of course, there's, you look at skill sets, and you say, okay, well, do we have an architect? Do we have someone with a legal background? Do we have some, civil engineering? And I don't know how we can, fit that in, if that would be something where, maybe they would just be separate. But I think that, nominees that come from a specific group, like the school board, like us, they should just be voted on by that committee, the finance committee. I don't know if that makes sense to
Similar
other
like
folks.
the Energy Task Force is doing now.
Well,
where
they
everyone
would,
points.
each of those boards would appoint a liaison, like the select board appoints liaisons to different boards and committees.
Yeah, well, as long as
Question is
it's
liaison or
voted.
voting?
It's voted on. I mean, I'd say there's a difference between appointment and voting on,
Well, no,
I mean,
the
if
school
you-
committee can vote to appoint, Russ Dupree.
Right,
as the
right. As long
liaison
as there's
to the permanent
consensus,
building committee,
that's
But
what
that
I'm
doesn't
saying.
necessarily make him a voting member of the permanent building committee. I think Westford's model is, it's people with specialized expertise.
Yeah.
Using, not to pick on Russ, I hope he's not watching, but Russ is an attorney. Does that make him a good fit for the permanent building committee just because he happens to be on the school committee? Not necessarily, and that's where, but someone from the school committee should be in the room when they're having discussion of school projects like a boiler for a middle school, which would be something this committee would take a look at. The
Yeah.
other thing is, we don't want to, we have to balance how the capital planning committee's current
That's what I was
role
gonna
is,
say.
and kind of, that role is not really set out very clearly in the charter, and so that may require some side work as a part of this process as well, which is why we need to get away from the specific proposal
Yeah.
and just start with, we're gonna do it, and here's generally what it's gonna look like, and we're gonna fill in the details as we go.
Stephen, I don't think that's the way to run the ship.
Okay.
I think you decide what you want it to do. Marie, the motion here says, the committee shall appoint 4 residents to the town and include of the town. I mean, why is the committee appointing anybody? And include members of the select board, the school
Or I
committee.
meant the select board. The select board shall appoint. So all of this is based
No,
on.
you mean the committee shall, consists of 4 residents
Yeah.
of the
Okay.
town, and they've got to be, that's why we got to go.
So let's start with the first part of this.
People thought a lot about this stuff rather than
Okay.
just writing down motions here. I
Okay.
think we need to.
Well, that's why, let's break
it.
it down into 3 parts. The Standing Building Committee should advise the Select Board. We all agree it's advisory. Regarding what? Do we agree all building products renovations over 50 and a 10-year building plan? Or do you want to skip some of those or add something else? What do we want them to advise us about? Does anyone have a feeling?
I think it's duplicate. This is what the charter says the capital planning committee is supposed to be doing. We have a charter in the town that if the capital planning committee's not doing it, then let's get them to do their job, but.
They're not in charge of our buildings
All
projects.
expenditures over $10,000. if $50,000 is over $10,000 and it's an expenditure, that's a chart, if we don't like them, doing, somebody's gonna challenge this, Marie, because.
Okay, let them challenge it, because we have to start the discussion.
Violate,
Right.
but we've got let's tell the capital planning committee to do their job.
Capital Planning Committee meets how many times a year to present the
well,
capital plan?
that's-
No, I think, I
That's a
disagree
different
strongly.
story.
To
There's
say
nothing that
they're gonna
says
be
they
in.
can't meet throughout the year, they just haven't.
Then we
met
now
throughout the
have
year.
to change the capital planning to include architects and construction people. That's not
Good
what
for-
we do.
And maybe we ought to, so that they know what they're.
Now
what
you're
they're
giving the
evaluating.
building committee and the Capitol building too much to do, because we're talking about 3 major projects coming up in town.
Actually, Marie, I'd argue not. Having been on the capital planning committee, and I can tell you that the reason the capital planning committee meets November, December, and part of January is because that's all it takes to do what they're asked to do. But if we actually gave them something to do year-round, they could meet year-round, they could have a better makeup of people who could do these things, and actually then integrate the building capital with other capital, which could be, other major expenditures. I just think that
I don't
this has
think
morphed
you-
so much, and I understand
Yeah.
you're pushing this hard, Marie, but I think
Because
it's.
we've been talking about this for 3 years, and I hear, you see, you're always getting letters, you're always getting phone calls. I get letters and phone calls, and what people say is, why don't you have someone looking at all these projects at once? Why don't you have a 10-year plan? Why are we looking at the adult center here, and then this other group's looking at the DPW, and this other group is talking about middle school, and they're all going, and everyone's having a different discussion. Why don't we have
Steve,
one
you
group
read it.
that's doing
I
it?
just read it, yeah.
And what does it say the capital planning committee's supposed to, that's exactly what the capital planning
No, it's
committee's
not
supposed to
supposed
do.
to be doing the building
Well,
projects.
No,
so I already
Have
did.
they ever looked at the high school project? They were never once referred to look at the high school
And
project.
shame on the town for not doing that.
Then we,
So-
do you know how many people
But
are
does
on our
that mean we
capital plan?
create
No.
we create a new project?
No,
Or
it's
create
a.
a new committee?
No,
If
we
we're gonna
need
have
a
a
new
hierarchy
committee
of
because it's a
committees, we don't
very,
need a new
very
committee.
heavy-duty requirement that we're asking these people to do. And at one point in time, are we going to be talking about future projects, about the 10-year plan? The capital planning committee has a very big job on their hands. And right now, they've only been able to take 2 or 3 bites out of what they need to do. And they need the information on the follow-up closure of projects. That's where they need their extra meetings, so they can see the closure of projects and how the projects were completed. Not to say, you guys, in the meantime, you're in charge of the new adult center and the DPW and the middle school, and make sure that all of the contractors
No, but
coordinate
they're not in
through them.
charge of that, Marie. They're advisory, they're not the building committee that oversees the construction of projects. That's what you just said. They're just advisory to the
They're
select board.
they
If they're
are-
gonna be the building committee like the school
Yes.
building committee was,
No.
that's very different from being advisory to the select board.
They then report to us, and the final decisions are made by
You
us.
gotta decide what you want them to do.
I do.
because-
I want them to review and audit and keep an eye, and then be the advisory to us. We need this in town. For us to say that the guys who are doing the capital plan are now in charge of all 3 of these new buildings coming up, I think is
There- This building
outrageous.
committee, you just said, forget about what we were told, they're not in charge of these Is this building committee going to be the construction oversight? Are they gonna be what I'll call the Peter Greenberg, Bobby Barquette model of being in those buildings every day? Every day, not twice a week. They were there an hour or 2
Okay.
every day. Is that what we're expecting these people to do for these construction projects?
I don't think-
That's very
I
different
don't
from what
think-
this paragraph says.
No, that paragraph says that they are to advise us regarding to all. They must be keeping an eye on these projects. They must know who the contractors and subcontractors are. They have to know when the change orders are, and they have to be reporting to us on what's coming up with the thing. We're not gonna sit there and review change orders and everything.
Wait, can I-
Okay.
let me jump in.
Go ahead.
Just wait. Okay, so there is a distinction between the role of the capital planning committee and the role that is conceived of for the permanent building committee. It's an additional role that isn't really contemplated by a level of depth and a different type of role that really isn't contemplated by the charter. And I would argue that based on the concept that I'm familiar with, that I agree with, the membership of the capital planning committee currently, who are all smart people, very dedicated, but the chair is a physician, I think Dan Healy was a CPA, They do have somebody with some HVAC background, but it is not a group of people who are specialists in those fields. That's the difference. I mean, it gives the permanent building committee goes to a different level of depth on building projects over 25 or 50,000. So they're focused just on those, not if, a $7 million senior center and a $35,000 pickup replacement. It's specialized on the building project. They look at all of the facilities. They look at, how are they used. If someone presents a project for a renovation of a wing of a building, they say, well, did you look at this building over here? The other thing that they do, which is different than the capital planning committee, is under our designer selection law, you have to have designer selection boards hire architects and engineers when you hire them for design work, and owners project managers, which when you hit a certain level of public construction, you must have. We have one for the DPW. The permanent building committee also serves as a designer selection board, so they evaluate that as well. There may be, the chair of the permanent building committee, I think, as Jody said, gets involved a lot. They may go to the projects every day, just because that's what they feel they need to do to adequately, communicate with their members and with the Board of Selectmen in Westford. Peter Greenberg and Bobby Barquette, God bless them, they wanted to be in the building every day so they could understand. I'm sure there are plenty of school building committees out there where there aren't people that get involved at that level of detail. We may get a committee that does that, we may not, but that doesn't mean it won't be effective. So I hear what you're saying, Mark. There is a role for both committees, I truly believe. There are things that, and then I will go back to the site selection thing. Capital Planning Committee will never be involved in site selection. That's clearly not their role under the charter, but this group could be empowered to lead site selection discussions in advance of making recommendations to select board. In fact, I think that's the consultant selection recommendations, the site selection recommendations, and then the specialized nature of the membership are the three things that differentiate it from the current Capital Planning Committee as it's constituted under a charter, and I think it is something we need.
Does this replace then the current DPW building committee? Does it replace the current adult center building committee?
Mm-hmm.
So they're gone with the creation of this committee.
Yeah. I mean, I think.
Well, that's why we want to do this. So you
Well,
don't have to
let me say this.
go through
I
that.
think it's the DPW committee, is kind of at a critical juncture for the project. They're trying to bring it to town meeting, and the people that have spent all that time want to, because we're asking for the debt exclusion in May. So I think they would like to see this through to that vote. I know the Adult Center Building Committee have also dedicated a lot of time, but it's just a different point in that project duration. But the DPW committee understands that one way, whether we have a permanent building committee or not, they may be done in May one way or the other. So I think it's yes, it would replace these committees going forward.
We just might phase them.
We might phase them out. I mean, like I said, DPW committee is that we need them essentially to explain the project to the community.
Some of them may be on the permanent building committee.
Some of them may be on the permanent, because some of them are specialists in real estate and engineering and things like that.
And some from the adult center could be on the permanent
definitely.
building
There's
committee
expertise in the
also,
adult
yes.
center too.
But Marie, nowhere in this proposed motion does it at all give this building committee the authority as Stephen said, design and construction oversight.
Well, no, that's why I'm saying there's 3 sections to it. This is a draft. Add to it, design, what was it that you wanted to add? Design and,
Why don't we do this? I think, just to move forward, I think I would recommend that the board either take a vote to form the committee in the general way that, it doesn't have to be the language Marie presented, but just take a vote to form a committee and give me some general parameters. And then, Mark, if you want to take a draft of what you think it should say, or 2 members of the board want to get together, Bill, you and Mark want to work together and draft, take the model from Westford, wordsmith it to your heart's content and bring it back, but at least let's put a marker down saying we're doing this.
I agree.
What is that? Backwards to me. Just form a committee and then decide on the responsibilities.
But we're not getting
later.
anywhere doing it the way you want to do it.
No, because, Stephen, I have in my packet 2 documents that say permanent building committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I read those as, those were the structure of what this committee's gonna do. And the first thing Marie said is, forget about those. Well, I had no way to forget about it. So now I gotta work on what's here in a paragraph, and that's inadequate, to tell you the
Well,
truth.
that-
It doesn't
I
give them
think-
any authority or responsibility. It just tells them they're gonna advise the select board. And without any authority or responsibility, what are we creating this for? And why would somebody serve there? So I think you put together essentially the mirrors of the documents that you want. You know, one of which is the policies or the charge, you know, and the other may be the charge. And then we vote on, yes, that's what we want this committee to do, let's form the committee. But to say, let's form a committee and figure out what we want them to do is
Right
putting the
now,
cart before the
well,
horse.
right
I
now, we're
can't-
going back and we're actually creating mission statements for all these committees we've had all these years. So they haven't had missions to begin with. They've just had one or two lines in the charter. Now, how about if we say we move to establish a standing building committee and and appoint a subcommittee to create the mission and composition? And then that report comes back to us at the next meeting, which is going to be January 9th. And Mark, you could be on it, and anyone else who would like to work with him on it. I personally think we could just make a few changes on this and we would have it. And then as we go along, we're going to find out, as Stephen says, pressure points on where we really need them, what needs to be done more. And I would ask that committee to come back and give me what their mission statement is, on what they feel they need to do. Once you put those people together, I think organically it will evolve as the projects are pulled in front of them. But if we want to create that huge, long document, that's how another town did it. I don't think we can do that until we see what the culture is of this town and what this group really ends up being able to do. So I do it differently. I say let them come and tell us what they think they're capable of doing and what they don't think they're capable of doing. But their projects, this is a rough parameter of what we're expecting them to produce. So the question is, do we want to just say a motion like I have and just bang it out and get it done tonight? Or do we want to say we want to establish a building committee, a motion for that? Or do we want to say, no, we're going to get a subcommittee to rewrite the motion and create an initial mission statement? Which way do we want to go with it? And the reason I'm pushing the accelerator on this is we've been talking about it for 3 years. We now are talking about 2 major projects going in front of town meeting in 5 months. That's not much time. And we're going to be and I want to interview these people. I want to get them on board, start working with it, so that we don't go in front of town meeting with egg on our face saying, yeah, well, we really haven't. And plus the SOI is coming in front of us. Well, yeah, some point in time, we're going to look at the 3 projects together. And we don't have enough time on this board to do it ourselves.
I just want to make sure I heard what you said there correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should move forward with this. We should we should either develop a document that governs the committee that's clearer than what the charter says with the capital planning committee. To be honest with you, that's inadequate.
Yeah.
But give it more thought than obviously it's gotten. But at least do it with a purpose, and the purpose is we're going to do this, and keep it going. But I wouldn't think that we'd have a committee impaneled in time to review and advise on the 2 current projects in advance of warrant votes.
No, but I want them to be starting. I want
Right,
them
but
to
I think we
be
should go to town
impaneled and
meeting.
going
I think
and
we
say,
should go to
this
town
has been
meeting and say,
established. Yeah.
by the way, we have appointed the permanent building committee, so moving forward, this group of people is going to be taking the lead on these projects in this effort
Yeah.
town-wide going forward. I think we should report that to town meeting, because the first, second, and third thing we're gonna hear is, why don't we have a plan? And, you know, it's like I said, we do have plans, it just isn't in a consolidated way. So I guess, like I said, I've already stated my recommendation.
So the question is there a motion tonight at all? Whether it's to form a subcommittee, or to establish a building committee, or to go all the way and create the purpose of the committee and the composition of the committee?
Well, I guess I could see how the capital planning, projects come in through us, through the town manager, to the capital planning, and then they should get passed off to this committee as the next step. But I think you're right. I think we should have, maybe we could have Stephen even do this, but to rewrite this permanent town building committee proposal, or, the policy, just sort of clean this up. I know you've tried that once.
I'm trying to push it off my
You're trying
my
to push
plate.
it
Come
off
on,
your
man.
plate to,
You're killing me here.
all right.
Well, because
I just
I'm
picked
afraid
up a
he's-
bunch of work in the
yeah.
last vote.
You know, he just brings, my concern is he brings proposals to us, and we rip them apart anyway, so maybe
Yeah, I
we
see.
should bring them out, and then we'll rip apart our own product. That's-
Well, the thing is, you're hearing from your constituents on this, and you guys have a vision of what, you know, it could be, and then I'll give my feedback on it
Yeah.
as well. But I do think, you know, Mark has strongest feelings about it, and you make great points. I know you don't agree with the timing of it, but that doesn't mean you can't influence the content or the definition of it.
Well, people are always asking to, you know, we should establish a permanent building committee. I hear that consistently, so.
So is there a motion tonight to either establish a subcommittee, to move it off, kick it down to the 9th again, or to just say we're going to establish the committee, or to have Mark rewrite it now? Where are we standing as a group?
I mean, I've given my opinion. I think we should create the structure of the committee before we establish the committee, so we know.
And how we're going
what
to commit,
agreeing
how we're
for.
going to create that structure is the question. How are we doing it?
Somebody sits down and puts together a proposal.
And
that
who's
this
going to
board-
sit down and write it?
Obviously, nobody's interested in doing that, isn't that?
Well, because
that must
I
tell you
sat down
something, Marie.
and, I sat down and wrote something.
That must
I'll
tell you
rewrite
something.
it, and then everyone will kind of try to rewrite it.
You're-
Well,
you're
in
the
other
only
words, you
one
don't want a
excited.
building committee.
What? I don't know what, I certainly don't want a building committee that's advisory to the select board that I don't know what they're gonna be doing. I mean, to say that we're gonna establish a group of people who, when the town approves a building, you know, gets the step in, I think the MSBA state model of a Long Meadow School Building Committee worked well. You know, and I was on it and off it, you were on it a while, it worked well. It had local citizens deeply involved in making things happen the right way, as opposed to just saying, we're turning it over to our professional staff, let's go hire a couple of people to do it. Like, the school building committee had the OPM, the owner's project manager. The, if you will, civilian oversight of that owner's project manager was very, very important, and that's what we got. Do I support having that for the next building that comes up?
Yes.
Whether it's a DPW or an adult center, I absolutely do. But
Then-
that doesn't say,
then
but this doesn't say
How,
that.
then what would it require to put in that? Oversight, audit, and of
It's
design
more
and
than-
building?
It's more than oversight and audit. It's, you know, I mean.
Tell me what it is.
I can't, you know, I can't do this in 30 seconds, Marie.
Mm-hmm.
I actually came in here tonight thinking we were voting on what Stephen's draft
Mm-hmm.
was. And unless we have something else like that, I'm not prepared to structure that in this meeting unless you want to be here till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
I mean, but yet, I think I made it clear that having been on the inside, been on the outside, there's real value to having citizens in Long Meadow oversee it. I'm not sure that this is the group that coordinates multiple projects, because I'm not sure that they have that kind of a large vision in terms of what's more important. You know, we're gonna get people on this committee who are partisan, they're gonna want, you know, be on this committee because they want a particular project. You know, I really don't want to delegate from the select board or from the town meeting, you know, what comes first, how we do it, how we pay for it, it ultimately comes down to town meeting, so why fool ourselves?
Because
to
that's
think we're
what the
gonna-
leaders are supposed to, the community is supposed to do. They're supposed to go with an educated plan and recommendations to the town meeting, and the town meeting might decide they disagree with the leaders, but the leaders are still supposed to come and present something.
But it's not
Yeah.
this building committee that's gonna do that.
They're going to be
That's us, 'cause
advising us.
we're elected.
Right, and that's why they're advising us on what the long-range plans are. And so what it comes down to is there's always a reason not to do something. And again, the building committee's been in front of the select board for over 3 years. The last time it was brought in front of us in October, we said, the town manager said, well, give me a directive. Are you interested in a building committee? And everyone seemed to say, yes, we're interested. And again, we can't describe what we want.
So
Right,
we
I'm
went
going
out to Westford, and we found a model they had.
Yeah, and
and
no
then
one
we
was
said,
happy.
But we don't want that.
Because no one was happy with it when it was last presented back in October, November. Everyone said, we don't like this, so I said, well, let's get the.
we're not Westford, we're
Yes.
Longview.
Then what are we looking for from the building committee? Not what are we not looking for, what they can't do, but we can. Now, obviously, Mark, you're not comfortable with the whole thing.
But, no, I told you exactly what I'm looking for in a building committee.
And I
is the-
started to write it down, you said, no, not that.
Well, but
And you said, we can't do it now, so.
I don't believe we can do it tonight, but
How
I'm
does
telling
the
you what-
rest of the
you
board
asked me
feel?
what I'm happy
Do we
with.
have to go to a subcommittee and then vote on something on the 9th? Do we vote on establishing a building committee and then a subcommittee deciding on what that mission's going to be? What does the rest of the board feel?
Sounds to me like we need a subcommittee to clean this all up and come back next time with a recommendation.
Okay, and with a motion and a recommendation.
Yes,
And who wants to be on the subcommittee?
I'll be on it.
All right, anyone else interested in being on the subcommittee?
I'll do it with Bill.
Okay, so we've established a subcommittee. Do we need a motion for that? Stephen?
I would memorialize it just
Okay.
because, and I will happily work with the subcommittee if they would like.
All right, and the deliverables by January 9th. That's our next meeting. We're not on the 3rd. We're going to the 9th. And that way, everyone will be there, including Richard.
Oh, the 9th, I will not be here, actually.
Oh, you won't be here?
No. I won't be
Oh,
here.
okay. All right,
This isn't gonna
that's,
happen, 'cause
huh?
I'm not here for the next 2 weeks.
No, you told me you would be here on January 9th.
I
I'll do
will,
it.
but
I'll-
between now
I'll
and
do it.
then.
I'll do
Oh,
it,
okay.
Brandon. And you won't be here with the vote either.
No, I'll be here, I'll be here.
Okay. Well, yes, because you can work offline. It doesn't have to be at meetings. Yeah. So is there a motion to establish a subcommittee to create the mission statement?
To draft a-
To draft a mission statement as well as
Procedures.
procedure and the consistency, composition. That's it.
So moved.
Okay.
Whatever she said.
Which now Debbie will ask me to repeat. Is there a
Yes,
second?
tomorrow she's like, what'd they say? And I'm like,
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. First of all, Debbie, were you able to translate that into English?
Committee to draft mission statement and procedures.
and composition.
And composition for a building committee.
You'd be available to email or.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on. Age-friendly community vote. Now that is,
Could we do the fees? I know they're waiting here. Could we
oh,
just-
is somebody here for that?
No, but.
Oh.
can we-
No one's here.
Before we move on to new business, should we close out old business?
No. We're gonna jump back to that because we're not closing out old business because it's also minutes. I just wanna, the last thing, I wanna see if there's a feeling on age-friendly community vote. And that's basically something that I've brought up a couple of times and discussed, and stuff was sent in the packet. And it's a planning tool that as we look at programs, as we look at capital planning, infrastructure, our long-range plan, we consider the needs of the aging community. It's a program put together by AARP and who's the international, UNICEF.
Yeah.
Isn't it UNICEF?
I just saw a presentation on this at one of my managers' conferences, and Amy, I know, has looked into it as well. We're still on the front end of it. I think there's only, she said, a half a dozen communities have adopted this in the Commonwealth. I haven't looked in great detail at what's required to do it, but this should be a no-brainer for us because we do, the statistics that Mary Beth cited, the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission identified for us, showed us that this really is just like tree committee makes a lot of sense for us, that it would make sense for some other communities. This one I think makes a lot of sense.
Steve, what are the obligations if we vote for this? That's the one thing I didn't read through this. The financial obligations to us, the operational operations, the staffing obligations, what resources, because it wasn't free. This doesn't, well, we vote for it, we'll put it up on the shelf.
Yeah.
Now we're obligated to do a lot of stuff, and of all the things we're doing, and I'm not saying this is a bad idea, because the best thing we had here was what did we have? We had a website link here. But, it's at some point, we've got to understand what we're buying into when we approve this, Marie. And I don't know that we understand
Well,
that.
that's
At least
where
I
we,
don't.
that's where we create the plan, and there's supposed to be a long-term plan that you look at to providing facilities and programming. I think it goes hand in hand to what our Council on Aging is actually doing right now. One of the things that this does hook into, and that is funding and grants. Once you do go on this and you do create this plan that the COA would be creating, then we can start establishing for grants. Now, is it going to cost us money? Yes, it will, because if part of the long-term plan says, really, we need more benches in town where people are walking to the shops, and so we need a couple of more benches along Bliss Road, well, then that will be the cost of the benches. But it's not costs that are going towards some bureaucracy, it's costs that are going towards an infrastructure or a program that will support, right now, 1/3 to eventually 1/2 of our community. So I think that it is of real value, because if we don't create the plan, we don't really consider the question of the problem.
So we need to create a plan.
Yes.
Okay,
no.
so what resources are we going to use to create that plan? And more importantly, without more budget, what's not going to get done because we're doing that? I think that's a fair question to ask.
I think at this point, we could, the vote could be a directive to me to, explore and/or prepare an application, or at least, evaluate the application process for age-friendly community and report back to the board on whether or not I think it's a good idea. I just didn't get into the level of depth on it. We talked about it briefly, and it seemed on its face like a good idea, but I didn't get in that level of depth, Mark. Most of these things, Tree City USA designation, people love it. It does cost us a little bit. We have to have a tree warden. We have to plant a certain number of trees. It's not that heavy of a lift. If these things really were that resource intensive, no one would be signing up for it. So I'm guessing just on those grounds alone, it isn't a high bar, but I can't tell you what the bar is. So, but I would like a directive from the whole board, because it will be a lot of effort, and I want to have some buy-in before we go through all this process.
I was just wondering, what's the difference between, what this will really offer the town compared to what the Council of Aging does? Where are the missing pieces that they're going to provide?
It's different than just a Council on Aging. It's like from a policy standpoint, based on the what I saw in the presentation.
Yeah.
It really is like Complete Streets. Okay, Complete Streets is a different way of approaching street design. It doesn't tell you you must put bike lanes everywhere.
Right.
It doesn't tell you you must put bus stops everywhere. It just tells you need to approach your street design projects taking into consideration all modes of transportation. So
Right.
it's a mindset, and age-friendly communities is similarly constructed. Now, when you get into the details of what do you need to do to qualify, I can't answer, but conceptually, it really is just an approach to providing government service at all levels across the board, it's specifically to get you outside of the senior center and have all of your services, keeping in mind the needs of needs of people, of aged people.
And the driver behind this is AARP? Is that?
And
So it's like a product?
International.
And
International.
the World Health
Organization.
World Health
World Health
Organization, that's it.
Organization, AARP.
The driver is our nation's and our community's demographics. That's really the drive, and the needs of an aging baby boomer population.
Right.
But this AARP website that talks about creating an age-friendly community, I've read through it. It's a 2-year planning process that appears to require a good number of resources. And that's why I'm asking, because we need to have the ability to dedicate the resources to this, and not just say, we want another sign to put on the wall at Town Hall. 'Cause that
Well,
just
I think
doesn't
it's
do it.
much more than that, and I
Well,
think we
I
found the
understand.
community, what do you call it, Complete Streets, I think we found real value in it, and not only that, and when we saw that, it's really started driving resources to the town, because when you see these national and international organizations setting up, there's carrots involved with this. We are actually going to be able to provide resources to the town we didn't have access to before. I think the town manager's already attended a conference on it. He said it sounded like a good program. head of the Council on Aging, said it was a good program. I've been reading about it for months. It definitely seems to have some legs to it. And I think right now, one of the things that is missing in town is that when we go to put in a program, when we go to deal with infrastructure, are we really looking at our aging population, and does it really meet the needs of the aging population? Not so much as, what are we required by law to really do? Oh, we can get away with that. It's really looking to say, what is the best thing for our residents, and especially our aging residents? So it is a mindset, it's a tool in the box that I think will require some resources, but I think the value at the other end is definitely worth it.
But we don't know,
Right.
I'd like to
think
know
that
the
we should-
resources before we make the commitment.
I think that,
Stephen's proposal, yeah. Go off and
it
tell us
sounds
what
like
the
a good
resources-
idea, but I'd like to know more about it. And I haven't had time to really.
All right, I mean, I got it. If you want to take a vote to issue a directive, that's fine. If you just want to just
Go.
ask me to report on it, we
Okay,
can.
why don't you report on it? We'll put it on the vote for January 9th.
Maybe,
Huh?
maybe. There's no time sensitive to this. We have, the holidays are up.
No, but you know what the time sensitive is one of the things I've been trying to do is I'm trying to take one topic and we go deeply
I
in it and
understand
we
that,
get
but
it done.
we-
We're going to be going into water.
We'll do the
We're
best-
going to be going to
we'll
water in
do the best we can.
January.
We'll
Okay.
do the best we can.
Okay, so right now we're looking to put it on for January 9th.
I don't think that that's going to happen, to be honest with you.
You can't do January 9th.
I doubt that we can do that.
Okay,
Because
can you do?
we have the holidays in between.
And we've got the 23rd.
Right.
We've got the joint meeting, then we're going straight into budget, so it's being kicked
And
down.
we just gave a March deadline to do a major programming study of the COA in the parks.
So it's not going to be done this
Well,
year.
what if
I would just-
spend some
I-
time looking
Huh?
at, what if I volunteer to spend some time looking at it?
Okay, all right. And so we'll put it back on the agenda on the 9th, and then we'll see where it's going to go on the 9th, and see if there's
Yeah.
value in going forward.
Yeah, I've already stated that I think it's a good idea and we should do it.
Yeah,
But the timing is something we're going to have to figure out. Because
Okay.
there's work involved, we have limited resources, we just added a bunch of more work. There needs to be a little bit of sensitivity to things we have on our plate already.
no, I just know, I'm just looking at the next 4 or 5 months. We
It's
probably-
my responsibility to make sure,
Yeah.
to get it done.
Yeah, let me take that back. I do want to look at that, and I'll give you my input along the
Okay.
way, but I want Stephen to be on board when he's going to get his piece of it done.
Okay. All right.
Well, we'll do the best we can.
All right. All right, so we're moving on back to the beginning, old business, approval of minutes.
I have to abstain.
Okay, is there a motion to approve December
I
5th?
move we approve the minutes of December 5th.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, and review of calendar
Are you
meetings.
abstaining?
Yes.
Yes, and one
No, I wasn't.
abstention.
Okay.
Thank you.
And is there anything on calendar fees? We received that in the mail,
Yeah.
in our packet.
I guess I have a question on the calendar fees. You know, I like the Board of Health's, or the Health Committee, I guess, I don't know, the Board of Health's comments, and they tied their fee request, and this was for tattoo they tied it to actual cost of enforcement. And I thought that, well, because they gotta go, whatever it is, and they did some work on it. On the other hand, there was a proposal to increase solar fees, as well as, everybody else seems to be charging more, why can't we? And yeah, it maximizes our revenue, but to some degree, and I'll state this specifically because it's solar, I think, we ought to want to encourage that as a policy and not fee it into submission. And one could say, well, the fee's not going to stop somebody from doing it, but it might. And without a quid pro quo, without a real reason to justify the fees, I'm just questioning it. That's where I am right now.
Is that feedback? Can I get feedback on that?
I don't know.
Sure.
So there's, costs with fees. There's sometimes a straight line, a direct correlation between cost to administer, and then sometimes there's a straight line between the fee and market tolerance. Depends on what the fee is for and how badly people want it. I think in terms of the solar, it has not kept pace with inflation. Obviously, the $55 when these are thousands of dollars per installation isn't going to make a difference, but it makes a difference to us. There's obviously a significant number of them, and it's growing, and there is some level of effort involved beyond just, walk into, you may have to get up into the attic spaces. I mean, there is some, level of inspection that, not in all cases, but there are some times where the level of inspection has to be a little more rigorous. But it's not going to, the payback period on solar is getting shorter and shorter as they get cheaper and cheaper and better. This is just something that helps us out a little bit at really no meaningful impact to residents. I mean, we've done the single best thing we can do to promote solar installation, and that is make it by right in the residential zone. So you don't have to go to the planning board. You can just go get your vendor and put them on your roof, and that's why we're a green community. This just takes into consideration the fact that our cost to do the inspection in terms of wages, benefits, things like that, has gone up since 2012, but the fee has not.
So my feedback is that should have gotten in here just like it is for the body art thing, because what it says is the fee hasn't been adjusted since 2012, and the fee doesn't correlate to the expense of the installations. What you said is very different from that. It's almost compelling, but that's not what I'd read, okay? So that's my feedback. If and I'm not saying that we have to justify every fee that we have based on how many hours, Paul Healy spends, but that's not what it said, and so I was concerned about that. So that's my comment. Maria, if I could, I have one other quick comment on fees, and my comment has to do with a fee that isn't there, but I think ought to be, and that has to do with final water meter reads. It used to be that, we had a full-time water meter reading staff, and they were out every day reading water meters, and so when somebody was selling a house and we needed a water read, they just went and read the meter. Now we have to actually go out and take some actions to do that, and we aren't charging people for this non-scheduled water meter.
I think we proposed that those are on the fiscal year. Those we proposed in like June, and I thought we proposed that last June.
They weren't.
No, I don't remember that on there.
Oh, I know. I thought we had dealt with that, Jim, but we were only doing calendar year fees. The DPW fees are all fiscal year.
Yeah. So we can't implement a fee for that, except
You
for the
can.
fiscal
I
year?
swear we did something on that because we had a whole discussion about it, and I can't. It was a while ago.
don't
Well,
remember.
the summary we have shows 0, and I just think that that's.
Yeah, maybe.
There's something that actually costs us money to do, and
I think we did do that when we did the fiscal year fees,
But it
and it
didn't get implemented.
we
It
had
didn't get updated.
the workbook has 2 sheets.
I know, but it's
Right.
not on either sheet. It
Right.
shows, there's 2. There's final meter reading, and then there's one for less than 5 days' notice, and they were both 0s. And I gotta tell you, I think less than 5 days' notice ought to be a little stiffer than even the final meter.
I'm 90% sure we did something on that. But like I said, either way, we would do that in the fiscal year. I mean, we can do it anytime you want, but I'm just not prepared to say that we
Yeah.
did or didn't do it. But
Well,
I think we did.
Well, when do
But-
you do
but
the
it's
fiscal
not-
year? Is it May?
Usually in May or June.
May. I remember us
Yeah.
bringing things up in
Steve-
May.
But
so.
Stephen, we've got this, here's the
Mark, I
spreadsheet.
understand you're not listening to me. We do the
Yeah.
calendar year fees at the end of the year, the fiscal year fees in June. I'm not prepared to talk about the fiscal year fees because I only presented you with the calendar year
Yeah.
fees that I go to the department to say, if you're on the calendar year schedule, look at your fees, let me know if anything you think needs to be changed. Most of them, because we've been better about doing this recently, most of them are up to date.
Yeah.
This all started when I got here, when some of the fees hadn't been looked at for 10 years. Now we look at them every single year. If you had told me last week that you really want to look at this fee for this meeting, I could have prepared for it. I'm just not prepared to do it now.
So my question is actually going back to the fiscal year fees. The tattoo parlor, they were just talking what it cost them to do it. Did they look about what other communities are charging?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
are we going to be cheaper than East Long Meadow?
It's in the memo.
It is, okay,
Yeah, and it does, no, we are, like most fees, highly competitive.
okay. Because we don't want everyone to decide to open in Long Meadow.
Well, I'm
'Cause it's
quite
cheaper.
sure we're not going to legislate through our fee schedule.
I'm sure we will.
I shudder to think the consequences of that. No, I think, Beverly and
5,000.
The work that, the Board of Health, as you all know, is one of our most thoughtful and diligent boards that we have. No disrespect to the other ones, but they really, because they have a lot of authorities by statute, they really take it very seriously, and Beverly is really dogged in how she approaches these things. So I would be hard pressed to object to their recommendation. I do think when you really look at her justification and some of the other fees in other communities, it makes sense for Long Meadow. In terms of the solar fees, it was one that just kind of stuck out as not being updated recently. There's a lot more of these happening, and it just seemed more like a revenue opportunity that doesn't make a big difference to anybody else. So you're the guy always talking about new revenues.
I hear you.
So $55 is not going to affect the person doing the solar at all.
Is there further questions on the fiscal fees?
Calendar fees.
Calendar fees, not the fiscal.
Right.
Nope.
No? Is there a motion to approve the changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar fees as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. All right, so what do we have left?
Close the street.
Nope, that's done.
So we're done, we're ready to, any questions? Oh, town manager's report.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hold on. I think that's- yes, I do have a town manager's report. Okay. I have to flip back to it now since we're totally out of order. So I had made a note to talk about the wonderful Council on Aging 50th, but Tom stole my thunder on that, which is good because the people who actually did it were here to hear you say it.
Yeah.
And they've since left. The other thing that was a fun day for me because I emceed the raffle for the COA 50th, which is always a fun time. I enjoy doing that. They had amazing door prizes. I mean, we've done plenty of these events with the door prizes. This gets kind of, we're thankful for the generosity of people, but some door prizes are more compelling to a broader audience than others. And these were all great. I walked in and I said, I don't want to win anything. Didn't look at the prizes, gave my ticket to Eleanor actually, and said, you take it. I don't want to win anything. Almost immediately, I was like, what did I do that for? These were outstanding prizes, and I really want to commend Amy and the team there for really getting great door prizes and running a first-class event. The table settings were really well done. They really transformed that room into a upscale banquet hall. I don't know how you feel, but I felt that way.
Yeah.
I thought Tom did a nice job with his remarks. The guy with the head of the Elder Services for the Commonwealth was there, and he gave some compelling remarks as well. So all in all, it was a good presentation. From there, I went to a luncheon honoring Arlene Miller on the occasion of her retirement as a MAC, which I don't even know what that stands for. Basically, Solid Waste and Recycling Advisor for Western Massachusetts, and it was well attended. It was a fun luncheon, and I said to Arlene, I hope when I get to the end of my career, 3 different groups of people will want to get up and sing songs they originally wrote for me at my retirement party. It takes a special kind of devotion for 2 individuals and then a group of women who, if you know the song Jolene by Dolly Parton, Arlene.
Go ahead, do a little.
No, it was honestly, you go to retirement parties and you see, some of the standard remarks. That was kind of new for me because not just one song, 3 songs, all original compositions, and I thought it was really a nice tribute to Arlene and the work she's done, and I think really the meaningful impact she's made, not only in our community but throughout the region, and that was really clear. So I want to thank her for her service to the town in that role. I'm sure she's still going to continue to serve the town, but her service in that role as well to the rest of the Commonwealth. So, As noted, we did receive the GFOA budgeting presentation award, Distinguished Budgeting Presentation Award. It's the second year in a row, so we're on a streak. You know, I think it's, you know, we've added to it. Last year, we won it in fiscal year 2016. We won it again in 2017. I think we received better feedback. We continue to try and find ways to enhance the document and not just simply say, well, we got the award, so we're just going to change the dates. And I'm proud of that document. I think the board should be as well. It really represents the community in a great way. And to be honored by the GFOA is good acknowledgement. We also won an EPA Water Quality Award for our efforts on fluoridation. We've won this award in the past. What's different is the EPA changed the standard for fluoridation, and it's not easy to just make that adjustment and sustain that new level after you've been doing it a certain way for many years for the 12 consecutive months and win the award. As I think I laid out, lots of communities do fluoridate the water, but not all of them win the award. So I think that's a tremendous credit to our DPW, especially our Water and Sewer Division. The design, I did include in the packet a conceptual layout. I don't have it in my packet, but do I? Yes, I do. So, oh, mine got cut off a little bit. So a conceptual layout of the DPW. We had a really great design meeting with the DPW committee. It's going along very well. I know we're going to be prepared to make a very detailed presentation to town meeting, well, to the select board first, but town meeting after that. So I think that the design part of that is going very, very well.
Is this Dwight Road here by the parking?
That's the edge of the right of way, so that's not, Dwight Road doesn't, come right up to the parking. So there is going to be,
Dwight Road's here.
yeah, there's going to be tree belts basically on the other side of that line.
Okay.
No, Dwight Road does run that parallel to that line.
Oh, I see
But that's not the edge of the
Yep,
road.
yep.
It's there's right of way after that.
And,
Property line.
did you nix the idea of a second?
Not entirely. We haven't gotten the survey back, and they also did flag some wetlands in there. So between the survey and the wetlands, we're looking at that. There's also a few other options we may consider. But it's going very, very well. And of course, we want to make sure people are out there. We've put out a lot of information on the website. Apparently, the message isn't getting out. I'll be honest, I have a hard time understanding that. We're talking about it all the time. It's in the paper all the time. Apparently not. The reminder ends up on everybody's driveway. I just don't know how many people actually take it out of the bag and read it, because it is frustrating to me to get the feedback of, oh, we don't know the information. But we're trying to promote the project, because obviously we want the people's support for it. Dwight Road Diff Project, just a quick update. We had a productive meeting there as well. It's a learning process for just about everybody involved, and we're having the assessors work on it. The consultant that the developers retained to help with this prepared a brief presentation summarizing what the diff is and how it works and how they view what we're doing here. I included that just for your edification. Establishing a diff would be a town meeting vote, so it's something that I will if things progress as they are, I'll likely be asking the board to consider for the warrant. I think it would be kind of a neat synergy if we were able to do the diff district that will fund the improvements to Dwight Road, and then have approval for a DPW project where one of the concerns is going to be traffic, and say that we have a plan that's now done that will mitigate that not only for the DPW but for the entire region. I think that would be a powerful 1-2 punch to bring to the voters.
And I have a question on the diff. Is it, right now, we're doing the Converse Street project. The diff would deal with Converse and Dwight intersection. It would not affect or change
No, it's all of
what
it.
we're doing.
It would also do Dwight and Williams.
All the way to Williams.
And
No, I'm talking about Converse Street. In other words, we're not redoing Converse Street. We're going to be
Oh,
looking
no,
at.
no, we're redoing Converse Street, but that project ends basically where
That's what
Yeshiva
I-
Academy is. It
yeah.
doesn't they didn't want to touch the intersection.
So I wanted to make sure
Oh,
the
yeah.
residents understood, we're not talking about redoing what we've just
You know,
agreed to
right,
spend $5 million on.
we're finishing off Converse Street in a way that's not a part of the Mass DOT project, which is the intersection with Dwight,
Okay.
and then addressing Dwight and Williams, and then in East Long Meadow, Benton, and Chestnut.
Okay.
And making sure there's interoperability with the signals, because we do believe a traffic signal will likely go in as a result of the project at Dwight and Converse. It's probably needed today. It's a hugely expensive proposition, but when you lump it together with all four, you really resolve that for a long time to come, and the tax revenue from the project will fund the improvements, or the debt service on the improvements, so there's no net impact to the taxpayer today. And I think I said this to you last time, the argument could be made, well, but then we don't get the revenue. But right, if you don't do the improvements, the project doesn't happen and you don't get the revenue anyway. And that's the key thing that sometimes people, lose sight of. If you don't do it, they're not gonna build it. And that's, or in the case of the Long Meadow side, it's a buy right project. They'll build it and add more traffic and you won't get the benefit of the improvement. So that's what's compelling about the diff. I also included a draft letter of support for an amendment to our TIP scope of work. So if you've had a chance to look at it and you're okay generally with the language, I would, print out a copy and I would really just have Marie maybe sign it on behalf of the board, because I don't have a copy for everybody to sign. Basically, we want to, the current limits of the TIP project, I don't know if I think it goes from Williams north south or Bliss south, but we want to connect it with our work that we've done on with the casino mitigation money, which is basically Bliss north to the Springfield line to Forest Glen, and we think that we should combine our resources with Mass DOT's resources and do it as one big project. I would also be seeking a similar letter of approval from our state delegation to submit with the request for the amendment. It doesn't really cost us anything to do this, and they may say yes, may say no. It's at the very beginning stages of the TIP planning process, but it's good to put this down now to let them know what our expectation, what our desire is.
Is there any objection to that letter going out?
Yeah, I just have, I'm not sure I'm objecting to it, but first of all, the letter has, you gotta do something, because it says, include the section from Converse Street heading north to the Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to say the Springfield line or something. I don't know what it says.
Or take the article out, yeah.
Whatever it is. Yeah, to Springfield, whatever it is. But, Marie, this gets back to my concern about, do the town residents want to change the character of the town? And I say this because I go back 7 or 8 years when there was a distinct vote. This is before a lot of people were around. We didn't want to widen Converse Street because it would increase traffic and make Converse Street more of a highway. And we didn't want to widen Long Meadow Street because it'll make it more of a highway, and yet we took part of Long Meadow Street and widened it because we needed the state to pay for the culvert underneath the brook at the time. And yet we're creeping up to creating 4-lane roads on our main streets, and the question is, do we really want to do that?
I don't know if we're creeping up to 4-lane roads on Long Meadow Street by asking for the funding to be tied together and to try to save money on the project. I think that design, if it's going to turn into 4 lanes, there'll become a time the select board can say we don't want 4 lanes. Am I correct, Stephen? Or by signing this, we've now accepted to anything that the Mass DOT is going to put down in the center
I don't
of
think
Long
that that's
Meadow.
the case, but
Because we own that street. It's not a federal highway. It's not a state highway. We
Where
own
did we
Long Meadow
vote
Street.
to approve 4 lanes on Converse Street?
We never did, and we haven't, and we're not
No,
going
there
to.
isn't. I think,
It's about
well,
funding.
It's not a state highway, Route 5.
No, we
No,
own that.
yeah, we
That's
own
why
that.
we won the MGM
right.
money.
If it was a state highway, you would already have 4 lanes.
Yes.
So you're not obligating yourself to 4 lanes here, but if Mass DOT says this is the way to do the project and it's 4 lanes, then you're not getting the money. And that may happen. I think
Exactly.
to your question, Mark, do the people want the character of the community change? There's a school of thought that could suggest that sitting in traffic at 8 o'clock in the morning trying to get out of town is also part of the character of the community that people aren't fond of. And so we get a lot of complaints about traffic. And even though people like the character of the community, some segment of rational voters are going to have to accept that you cannot have it both ways. And to suggest that if we widen Long Meadow Street, we're going to get more traffic, really does not accurately assess the traffic, the roadway configuration in the region as we have it today. There's no other way to get to the highway but through Long Meadow for most of those people taking those trips. They're still going to do that, and as we discovered in the casino process, our best option, our best defense, is making our roadway network better able to handle it without disrupting the lives of people in Long Meadow who want to get from point A to point B. So, yes, it is going to be a change in the appearance of the roadway, and in certain parts of it, a change in the character, but it's also going to be a change in the character of our traffic and how difficult it is at times to get across town.
Where can I see, there's a plan, obviously.
This is really preliminary.
Oh, okay.
We do have like a 25% design on the north side of the work. Like I said, this makes a lot of sense because it's combining our efforts. The timing of the casino work and the timing of this is starting to line up better, where it may not all get done at the same time, but if you're going to do a corridor planning effort, do the whole corridor. Don't bisect it. And that's all you're committing to now, is looking at the same time. Of course, we reserve the right to not do any of it later on, but then we're just going to have to pay out of our own pocket to get it done.
And actually, I don't think Bill did get to see those preliminary plans because it was before June, so if you could.
Yeah, Bill, if
make
you
a
want to come
point
by
of
the
trying to
office,
send
I
that
can
out.
roll those
Yeah,
out
I'd
for you.
love to,
Yeah. And Tom, I'm not sure, at some point in time, you'll want to show us again, but anyone could go by
Yeah.
and take a look at it
We
again.
presented them here
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
back in,
this
I believe,
spring.
May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you nothing's happened on it, because I think we're really looking now, we've kind of pivoted away from pushing that as a single project to really tying it with the TIP project. It makes too much sense at this phase to not do that. So I mean, we want to send the package in, it's already drafted, we just want a couple letters of support to increase our chances. It makes too much sense to not do that at this point. So with consensus, have Marie sign the letter on behalf, and we'll obviously fix the typos and stuff.
Mhm.
All right, I didn't hear no, so I'm gonna take that as yes.
Okay. So there's a lot of traffic planning that's really coming out since you got here, between the MGM, Converse Street's up, we're looking at.
If things fall into
some
place the way
major-
we have
yeah.
planned, between
Mhm.
Converse, Dwight, and now this
Long Meadow.
Long Meadow Street,
Mhm.
it'll be a radical improvement
Mhm.
over 5 years or 6 years, depending on the timing of things. Like almost an historic level of redo
Yeah.
for all our major streets. That's important. I think
I cannot believe how busy Long Meadow Street is. When
Yeah.
I'm coming back south into town from work, 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's backed up all the way to.
Especially if there's a problem on the highway, they don't get through.
Oh, you should see Converse Street at 3:30, it starts.
Yeah.
I can't get
Converse
into
is-
my office space.
Yeah, you could see how Converse and Dwight, you could easily see how if there was 2 lanes taking a right and then 2 lanes taking a left on Maple, things would move a lot smoother.
Oh, yeah.
But other than that, I mean,
And
it's
that's-
not going to work.
That's the thing. And that's why widening is going to be widening and better signalization is going to be a necessary component, because in the case
Yeah.
of Forest Glen, the reason why it backs up is the highway isn't necessarily backed up. It's not enough cars can make it through that phase of the signal.
Where it slows down, where it narrows.
And you
Yeah.
can't all of a
Right.
sudden make it a much longer signal on Long Meadow Street, because then Forest Glen and Converse are going to back way up then too. You have to
Right.
balance, and we analyze the phasing, we do all that stuff, but there's just not enough lanes to move the volume. It's that space and volume thing we were just talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why it's important that people have to just keep an open mind about it, because like I said, you're not going to be able to have it both ways. The cars aren't going to go in a different direction. There's not going to be less of them, and so, to improve the timing of things, when we looked at turning, going to a couple of lanes going north at the end of Long Meadow Street. I don't know if you remember the graphic, but the queuing was dramatically reduced by going to 2 lanes heading north. I mean,
But we
cut in
only,
half or better.
But we only get right up till the end of Long Meadow, and then we're dependent on the city of Springfield to say, yeah, you can continue, because, in fact, this month, or couple
Oh, yeah,
months, 'cause
the
the
bright
highway,
nights, yeah.
it is, it's not bright nights, but it is the highway that slows things. I mean, that whole ramp is backed
Yeah.
up right now, but And that's been the major problem the
But
last
yeah, but I
couple
mean,
months. But
the modeling, I think, supports doing it. And the other thing is, let me tell, if anybody still hasn't been bored into submission by this conversation yet at home, no one is conceiving of 4 lanes,
Yeah,
boundary to boundary. That's not.
no.
It's really just a couple of blocks at the north side of town that you saw the plans, that we've kind of contemplated a couple of extra lanes to really alleviate that choke point.
Right.
But it doesn't even go down all the way to Converse, I don't think. And then similar to Dwight Road would be widened significantly, but really, there's not a lot of homes there. It's
Yeah.
not a big, and it feels like a wide road anyway. And that would really, that's really a major improvement and would help that end of town too.
I want you to keep in mind what the board said, though, a couple of months ago about streetscaping, that we really want to have a hand on how that, I think, can change or affect the character of the town. So as we go forward, we'll want to have a say in that.
Sure.
Mhm.
Speaking of the Converse Street project, I just put in the information from SDOT about the bids. Baltazar is the contractor. I think pretty on point with the bid, with the estimate. And then I just had information about we've settled out almost all of our wage settlements and retros and things like that, and we were under budget.
Okay, great.
Stephen, I have a couple of questions about some things in there that in the individual reports. The DPW report, it noted that the bids for our guardrail replacements came in below our appropriated amount. And so I guess my question is, since the town appropriated $100,000 to do guardrails, can we do a few more guardrails as opposed to say, we're only gonna spend the $81,000 this year and give the other 19,000 back? I mean,
I think
how do we decide, you know what I'm saying? How do we decide, do we do more or give back?
I think we have a list of projects that we put on there as priorities,
Yeah.
and then you go to the next one. But if there's not,
Well, if the next one's $20,000, you only have 19.
well, no, you could do it. But
You only do part of it.
if the next one's 40 and you have 19, then you're not doing it. And so the money goes back into the general fund. It could go back into the form of free cash, and in the springtime, you could go back in the May time meeting.
Well, I guess I'm just saying, you go down and find something that's $19,000 worth of guardrails. All I'm saying is the town's appropriated $100,000. You know, my sense is we might as well do $100,000 worth as opposed.
I'd have to check with Andy
Okay,
Carr
I'll-
about the level of design.
You understand my.
Yeah, no, we always, they want to do more all the time.
And I also wanted to make a comment, not to you, but I was reading in the DPW, this is my sarcasm for the evening, if I haven't had enough.
I was just gonna say, really?
I was reading in the DPW's monthly report that there's some issues at Center School, primarily that we're clearing out some fire alarm detectors that are outdated and the boilers that has issues. But my understanding from what I read, and also Blueberry Hill and Wolf Swamp schools need to have sprinklers relocated to prevent freezing, and the Blueberry Hill boiler needs to be replaced. And also in no instance though are we talking about replacing the school because that we need some maintenance done on them. And I thought that was very good that we're not talking about replacing the schools at this level. I think that there's a degree of maintenance that we are able to do to keep these schools operable.
I appreciate what you're saying, Mark, but I think if you're being honest, some schools, boiler issues are a hazardous condition. Other schools, boilers are not a hazardous condition. It really just depends on the school and who's going there.
Well,
It was just
I
a
noted that-
sarcastic
that-
comment.
Yeah,
He's
so
making.
I
That's what
was matching
you
sarcasm
found.
with sarcasm.
But I noted that the police
Yeah.
department has a boiler issue too, and this is the engineer in me, Stephen, I should have probably called Mario rather than you, but they're putting stop leak in the boilers to stop these leaks. What they ought to do is plug the tubes that are bad, just plug them, and so your boiler goes from having 475 tubes to 474 tubes, and you barely notice it, but it'll never leak
But
again.
they're boilers that were made in sections. And so you have to, basically the seams are in between
Okay.
sections.
All right, I thought
We do
they
have,
were
in one of the things I've
tube
directed,
boilers.
yeah.
That's why we should talk to
Well,
somebody who knows what
I've
they're
directed Dan McCarthy to really look into, because some of them are dual fuel, and
Yeah.
and if we're just gonna switch to natural gas, it does provide an opportunity to maybe get some incentives from the gas company. But we have basically a rash of boiler replacements
Yeah,
right now that's
right.
hitting us all at once, and they're, you know, you'd love to do $200,000 condensing high efficiency units and really drive down the cost. In most cases, we simply don't have the, I mean, every boiler we get is gonna be way more efficient than the ones that's being replaced, but not to, we just don't have the capacity to go to the high end.
Come to us and
Each-
say you wanna use green energy money. I mean, I don't know, but, anyway, there were a lot of boilers. Two other quick comments. One is that we got a very good summary, I think, from Paul Pasturzik about the public records request. I'd love to see that posted on our website so people understand that summary that we got in our packet. It was very, very explanatory and covered a lot of information, and I thought that would
Oh, okay.
be good to go on the website. And my last comment is that there's you know, if we're struggling with staffing because of illness and whatever at the fire station, we ought to talk about hiring another firefighter. And there's actually precedent for us doing that when we technically don't have an opening, but we seem to have these long-term issues that are overwhelming us with overtime. And so I'd certainly be welcome, Stephen, to having you come back to the select board, I don't know about anybody else, and say, look, we can't continue to run at a very high level of overtime. It's not safe. These are first responders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, oh, by the way, if we hire somebody else and everybody else does come back to work, we got plenty for that person to do. I think we ought to at least talk about that.
Well, let's see what the department head,
Well,
chief
well,
says. I mean, the chief will let us know.
I-
Yeah.
We do that internally. It's a
Okay.
personnel matter.
Right.
And we make those decisions largely internally. But like one of the things we did was we hired, I forget how we titled it because it was an important wording, but either an acting or a temporary firefighter. It was someone who had come out of the academy, had worked in a call department, and we interviewed for a full-time position, loved them, but went with somebody who we liked a little better. And then, you know, knew we were going to have an opening because of a retirement or a disability retirement or a long-term thing, and brought him on as an interim or an acting or something like that. And then when the spot opened up, we brought him on full-time. So I am with you. I try to be sensitive about bringing somebody on, having them adjust their lives when there may not be sufficient funds to keep them in the future. But but we also have to keep providing services.
Well, and that's where we can be helpful. I mean, I really, you know, the first thing we're gonna question every year in budget time is how many full-time people are in this department, you know, but if we've all agreed that, look, the fire department, I don't remember the exact number, the fire department needs 21 people and we've got 22 and we all agreed to have 22.
Hold that thought, 'cause
Yes.
Well, I'm good with
I have a supplemental
Yes.
budget request on my desk, and I'm gonna guess there's
Well,
something to that effect
Yeah.
in it.
But, I mean, we're sitting here spending an awful lot of money and having people work a lot of 16.
But I'm sure,
You know,
I'm sure the department head is making those analysis and the town manager,
oh,
so.
I guess my comment is don't be afraid to bring them to us.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments to the town manager? Yeah.
No?
I just had one that was wonderful, commend the fire department on the CO2 pickup when they went to the house and discovered that there was a furnace problem. That's fabulous. That's, and I did not
Explain that,
realize that
Marie, to
medical
people who-
bag, okay, they went in and responded to a small electrical fire, and I guess the medical bag has a CO2 detector on it, which went off.
CO
and-
detector.
CO detector, and it went off, and they realized that the couple was in trouble and took them to the hospital. That was, I
Yeah,
did not
it's-
realize they were capable of doing that. It's fabulous.
Well, I think the moral of the story, aside from the high-quality professionalism and attention to detail of our fire department, is that they didn't have CO monitors in their house.
Yeah.
And if you sit in it long enough, it will kill you. And that's why it's really important, and the fire department promotes installation of smoke alarms and CO monitors in households. And I think there was a time when they gave them away. I don't know if they still do that, but certainly if you want to get information about CO monitors and what to do, you can call the fire department, but it's really important to have those in your house.
It looks like they saved 2 lives.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, I want to commend them. That was wonderful. And that was at our notes that came in. It was not in the town manager reports. It was the weekly staff meeting that came in today. So
So we can
people
talk
might
about
not
it
have
again, we
had a
can talk about
chance
it
to
again
read
next
it.
month. We can talk about it again next month.
That's right. All right, so I think that's it. We're looking for, one last thing is I wanted everyone to see, I had them hand out the budget calendar that we had to point out that for your schedules, February 14th, we have another joint meeting, and I'm not sure if it's our regular select board meeting, but it's going to be with the school committee, and it's not, because it's on a Tuesday. And for our meetings for January, it's the 9th and the 23rd. The 23rd will be a joint meeting with the school committee. And then we have another joint meeting with them on the 14th, so that will be an additional meeting. And then I want everyone to get back to me for March, because usually the week of the 7th through the 16th, we try to push through the budget. And I'm not sure how people feel about what nights are better for them outside of a Monday night, but please let me know on your schedules what's going to work better for you. But you don't have to tell me tonight, but I just want to give everyone a heads up on that, because those are a little different. If you can make the 14th, if not, you'll get the copy of the school budget report, or you can review the tape, because I know it's difficult for some people not to be here
Now,
on Monday night.
You just said the 23rd is with capital planning. You said the
No,
school?
the 23rd is with the schools.
January 23rd.
January 23rd
yeah.
is, let's see what it says here. Select Board, no, it's going to be with the schools.
Oh, the schools,
And
okay.
we're going to have capital planning coming in on the 6th. So our joint meeting is January 23rd. Capital planning and community preservation are coming in on February 6th. And then on February 14th, we're meeting with the schools where they're going to be presenting their budget. And the finance committee will be there for that, too.
And January 30th is not a school joint meeting?
No, we're not having a
We'll change
meeting on the 30th.
that. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, we have our MMA conference, the end of that last weekend in
The
January.
22nd,
20
23rd.
It's
24th
the
of
21st and 22nd.
Oh,
21st,
21st and
22nd.
22nd. I thought it was after that. All right. And I'll let you, and so then you'll let me know, everyone just let me know what their availability is the weekend of March 7th.
Okay.
So we can try to get that on the schedule. All right, and so I guess I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to executive session to possibly for negotiations, to possibly reopen into open session.
Unless people feel like they're ready to go without having to go through all that.
What, not go to?
We're talking on the contract.
Yeah, to ratify the tentative agreement with the patrol officers. If people have had time to go through it and are just ready to go, we can do it, or if we want to talk about an executive session, we can.
I'd like to go into executive session.
So I'm looking for a motion.
I move we adjourn to executive session for contract negotiation with the possibility of returning into open session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Marie,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us. We are going to executive session, and usually the cameras don't stay around for when we reopen. So our next meeting will be January 9th. Happy holidays.